And you can't compare the motor to a 2JZ because people are sensitive on that. But
and we didn't touch on it either. I mean, from 07 to 09, I had Mark IV Supras, so I was taking Supras to the national event as well.
So you're big on the 2JZ?
Yeah, I had 9 of them. It's just really weird for me to have an LS in my Lexus. I got a lot of shit for that over the years.
Really?
But I did it purely to be different, to develop dedicated motorsports, to keep it alive. Because if it wasn't for doing that, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So if I put a 2J in it, I'd just be another guy with a 2J IS300. So I just took that same concept and applied it to the IS300.
What would they tell you on the swap though?
Oh, they'd be like, why would you take a 2JZ out of an IS300 only to put a shitty LS1 in it? You know, what they don't know is that the 2J that's in an IS300 can maybe hold 400 horsepower tops. It's not like the one that comes out of the Supras.
Right.
So.
You gotta choose a side. You gotta choose a side. You gotta pick. You gotta do what's right. You gotta
Welcome back to Go Hard Podcast. I'm your host, Noel.
Justin.
And my co-host, Justin, man. We are back in Dallas, guys. We got 2 heavy hitters on. Thank you so much for following the podcast. If you're new to the channel, make sure you follow, like, and comment who you guys want on the next podcast. And hit the subscribe button while you're at it. We got Justin here on the pod for the second time.
Technically third or fourth.
Oh,
You holding back them episodes, man.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Holding back them episodes.
You can't tell them. You got to just let it come out, and then
It's
boom.
coming. It's coming.
That's true.
Yeah, it's coming. But guys, we got another special guest here. He's been working on the GTR platform back in the day. Then he did the LS swaps on the Lexus, correct?
Yeah.
And then
It's confusing because I've done a lot.
yeah, he's done a lot in his time. And then he's working on the GM. He had the LT4 record,
Factory blower record. For
blower,
probably almost 4 years, yeah.
and then so yeah, I mean, you just do GM stuff now, right? Mostly GM,
Yeah.
and then
Pretty much
transitioning,
exclusively GM.
yeah. And then he's transitioning to Audi and
We're gonna do a little bit of the V10 platform.
Right.
Yeah. We're
Right.
dipping our toes in and see if we like it.
guys. Let's give it up for Matt Owen.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Introduce yourself, Matt. Tell us a little bit about you and your background.
So my name is Matthew Owen. I'm the owner of Dedicated Motorsports, which is primarily a GM specialty shop. But I have an extensive background in other cars. I don't know where we want to start with it, but
You can start back in 2012, when you started.
we'll go back to like 2004 or
Let's
5.
say he goes
Oh, wow.
back. He goes back.
Dude, I'm way
back.
older than I look, for one. So way back in the day, I was building Hondas in my mother's garage. Like, really not even in the garage, more in the driveway, because our garage was full of shit. And I had built this like Del Sol that had a 52 millimeter turbo on it, and it was fairly quick for what it was back in I guess 04 probably. And my buddy said, hey, there's this Toyota shop in Denton trying to hire a technician. He's like, you should go check it out. I was like, nah, man, I like my job at Discount Tire. Like, I'm good, you know? He's like, no, you should go check it out. So I contacted him. I drove up to Denton. There's a place called ATS Racing, and they only worked on 91 to 95 Toyota MR2s. It's like all they worked on was this 4 years of this
It's a
two-seater
niche platform.
Toyota, right? And I liked their shop. It looked cool, and they really liked my Del Sol. They're like, dude, when can you start? So I started working there, and I was just a mechanic, basically. And they were making these turbo kits, but they're like MIG welding these tubes to this block of steel. And I was like, man, this is cool shit, but like, we need to make it a little nicer, right? And he's like, well, how would we do that? I was like, well, on Honda Tech, everybody's TIG welding everything, you know?
Oh, so you were like in Honda Tech forums.
Oh yeah, I was deep in the forums because like that's kind of how I learned how to build my Honda, was like just based on reading.
Nice.
And everybody's following Tony Palo, and eventually I had Tony even tune my Del Sol like around the same time, and because he goes way back, way further than me, and they were like, well, we'll buy a TIG welder. So they bought this TIG welder, and then I had to learn how to TIG weld. So I did that there, like just late nights learning, reading on Honda Tech. And we started TIG welding all their parts. And man, I worked there for probably a little over 6 years. And I decided that I really wanted to go out on my own and do like my own fabrication stuff. And at this time, I had already LS swapped an RX-7, like an FD. And
Hell yeah.
I had Toyota Supras. You know, we were going to what is now Texas 2K. Back then, it was just the Super Nationals. And it just seemed like the Super Nationals was just a breeding ground for hardcore street racing. Like, you really could go test whatever you built out there. And you would know, you know, if you were slow or not, they'd show you. So in 2008, I decided to branch out on my own and open up my shop. And I was doing a little Honda stuff, doing a little Toyota stuff, and doing some V8 swap stuff. I was making some products for the RX-7, actually, like small stuff. But I was already making my own brand. And I created a website, and I was selling some of these products on there. And to be honest with you, I was pretty young. I think I was 24, and I felt like I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And the stock market crashed, and it kind of scared me. So I thought, man, I've got a lot of money invested. I had a Dynojet 224. You know, I had a lot of invested money here. I'm just going to sell this stuff and kind of work out of my house for a while. So I did that, and I was daily driving an IS300, Lexus IS300, and I was like e-brake drifting it, you know, just hooning around. And I was like, man, this would be really badass with like a 400 horse V8. So I had an old, like, blown up LS1 sitting around. I started measuring stuff on the chassis and the engine. I was like, dang, this thing will fit. Well, Texas 2K was like, I guess it was Texas 2K 9 or 8 maybe. And it was right around the corner. I had about 17 days before that event. And I said, I'm going to put this LS in here. So I got on Craigslist. I bought a wrecked F-body. And I'm doing all this in my driveway now. And I just worked night and day. I mean, tirelessly, night and day to get this car built. And on the like 16th day, I had to go down to Houston. And I drove it there with the LS in it. And the whole time I'm documenting it on the Supra forums, because Texas 2K kind of, all the shit talking was happening on the Supra forums. And I drove down there and people were like waving, high-fiving me. They're like, dude, that guy made it, you know? So it kind of revitalized Dedicated Motorsports for what it was. And it kind of revitalized me too, because I was kind of down in the dumps, just closed my company. And I'm 24, not knowing what the hell to do with myself.
Yeah.
So Texas 2K was fun. The car made it. We didn't have to work on it. Drove it all the way back. And I started making the parts, the swap parts. And I started selling them online, dedicatedmotorsports.com, selling these swap parts. I've sold, I think, like 400 swap kits for IS300s. And we still sell them today. I am discontinuing that, though, because it's kind of slowed down. And we're just got so much going on here. But if it wasn't for swapping that IS300, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to stick with your passion.
Got to be dedicated.
It'll take you places. Exactly. Yeah.
Were you the first one to swap the?
I was. Yeah. So I didn't have anybody, like, I didn't know what the pitfalls were. I didn't know if something wasn't going to fit. I had an 80-gallon air compressor and a gigantic Miller Synchro Wave welder in my 2-car garage. Like, I was building this thing.
Yeah.
Were you working with ATS still at that time, or?
No, because I had quit ATS to open my shop.
Okay.
Was
it called Dedicated back then?
It was called Dedicated back then, yeah. I actually came up with the name when I bought the dyno. I was already doing my own thing. I had my shop, and I drove to Florida to buy this Dynojet. And on the way back, I don't know if it was like sleep deprivation or what, but this 18-wheeler passed me, and it said, like, dedicated to bringing you success. And it made me think, like, over the years, I've been able to do these late nights and make these cars come together to get to Texas 2K, and they always are successful. So I'm dedicated. Like, that's kind of how it stuck.
So that car pretty much, they kind of like put you on the map.
Yeah, because it's just so unique.
Yeah, right. So could you talk about more in depth on the build? Like, if you use, what ECU did you use, and what fuel system or all of that?
So that particular first car was just, a basic heads cam LS1 with like an old 411 ECU that even now I still hate tuning those things. But I did do the tuning back then, even because you could like get on the forums and read enough to like figure it out. It was a real simple setup. I think it probably made 380 to the wheels maybe, but it was fun. You could drift it around. I mean, it's a 50-50 weight distribution car that I think it weighed maybe 2,800 pounds or so. Had an air conditioner. It was fun. And
one of those like Corvette filter regulator setups and all.
Yeah. It really was like, just a basic, Walbro in the tank and a Corvette regulator and one fuel line up to the rail is real simple. But I had to do it that way because, it was real quick too, for one. But everybody kind of followed the footsteps because I did document every day. I took 5 or 6 photos. I was like, hey, this is where we're going with it. I think we're going to make it. This race is coming up.
Yeah.
So that kind of was like a motivating factor too. Like, I need to get it done.
How many swaps did you see after that? After yours was done?
Man, it didn't take long. I had like 10 orders pretty quick, and I had to figure out how to make the headers. So eventually I started making the headers, and I actually outsourced it. There's just no way. Like, I made the first few, and I sent a jig to this place in California, and they made them for me. I think we sold about 300 sets of headers because people were sometimes turboing these cars too. And that was definitely the next step, was building a turbo version. But a lot of stuff happened in between that. Eventually, I went to go work for Boostlogic in Austin. And I wasn't there for very long before one of my good friends, Mitchell Mixon, who lived with me at the time of building that IS300. We both had IS300s. He was working at T1 Race Development. And he's like, man, we really need another fabricator here. And he talked to Tony and said, man, Tony knows who you are. Like, just hit him up. So I hit Tony up about a job because I just didn't like where I was in Austin. And he was like, yeah, when can you come up here and work? Like, you're hired,
So 2008, the market crashed, and you decided to put dedicated to the side?
Well, no,
you were still doing it?
For probably a year and a half to 2 years, I kind of exclusively did dedicated from my house. Like, I just sold enough swap kits to stay alive and happy, and kind of did my research on how to run a business and stuff. But I think at that time, I just didn't want to. I didn't want to keep that my main source of income. So I was looking for jobs, which is how I found the Boostlogic job. And then, like I said, shortly after that, I mean, this is like 2010 or 11 at this point, T1 kind of found me through a mutual friend. And I went over there, and T1 was trying to get into the GTR market. They had a couple of them there. They were still doing a lot of Honda stuff, which I had always looked up to Tony and T1, like, just held them very highly and just loved the way he did stuff. He just had a process to how he did it. I liked it. So it was a no-brainer to go work over there. And I'm very thankful for that time because the GTR market was starting. Like, when I started working there, there was a lot of things that weren't worked out. We would break something and be like, how the hell are we supposed to fix this,
Like what wasn't working out when you were there?
Well, the transmission game had not come very far yet.
They were only out for 2 years at that point.
Yeah, the fuel systems weren't really up to snuff either. We had done some stuff with the blocks in the beginning that didn't work out, sort of cracking some blocks. And it was just a lot of development. I mean, it's true that...
Which is real rare to even get that opportunity.
Yeah,
so.
it was cool. I mean, it was like we put a Weldon 2335 fuel pump like up in the cow, because there was no other fuel systems available to hold that horsepower. We were working close with John Shepard to develop transmission parts, like billet shift forks, because those were breaking. There was a lot, and it was a lot of learning how to take that development and stay positive with it.
Yeah. What about so I know back then, 2011-ish, I kind of messed with the GTR stuff a little bit, and that's when the transmission fluid was like $1,000 a change, and 2 track days, and you were seeing the temp go up, and you had to change the fluid. Was the fluid kind of something that helped, or did they just stick with the same fluid?
I guess it's kind of funny.
Because I know it got cheaper.
It was kind of funny because everybody almost had their secret sauce. Like, well, we're going to use this, and it might show up in an unmarked bucket,
Yeah.
And we're pouring it in, just like, oh, we gotta save it. We had green fluids and brown fluids, and then eventually a red fluid.
Because it's a manual trans that's just automatically shifted, correct?
Well, yeah, but it technically has like automatic clutches in it. It'll have either 16 or 20 of these clutch
Wet
discs that
clutches.
wet clutches.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that definitely was not my expertise, but when it was like 2:00 the day before, or 2 a.m. the day before a race, and John Shepard's like, well, take this out and put it in the mill and mill this part down a little bit and put it back in there. I was like, okay, dude, whatever you say.
Yeah, they were they were real dedicated when they go to 2K as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it was them or one of them swapping a motor overnight.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm like, man, this is insane.
Yeah.
They come out with a pallet of motors and transmissions, and I'm like, well, they're definitely coming to do something.
It was cool over the years, because like when I started working at T1, the guys that are there now had came there maybe a couple years after I'd started, and we developed a really solid crew, and they still have like a ridiculously solid crew where they can break a trans or even hurt an engine sometimes, and they're gonna fix it at the track and keep
Their
going.
tech retention seems to be really, really solid. Which
Tony's a good dude to work for.
Being able to work with Tony would definitely be a blessing. I think he tuned my Prelude back in the day too.
Yeah. He's doing a lot of.
I had a Honda. A couple of them. We all started with them.
Yeah,
I
they're
didn't even know
fast.
that.
It's the only thing you could, mess with back then. A little FMU and a little bit of boost.
Yeah, they're too fast. Honda, man.
So how was it your experience? Like, if you can go more in depth on working for Boostlogic and T1?
Well, the biggest thing was my fabrication background. So I was big into fabrication. I truly loved it. It was a passion. So, walking into T1 every day I was just living the dream. He had the facility, he had the clientele, and these guys wanted the biggest turbos you could possibly put on a car. And just about everything we did had to be custom made. So it was a unique opportunity for me to just put the nose to the grindstone and build whatever we needed. Like the first big front mounted turbo kit for a GTR. Like, we had no idea if they would fit up there, what we were gonna have to deal with to get them to work, but just ground it out and got it done. I have made 10 iterations of that kit, but it's still putting turbos up there because it's the only place they really fit. But yeah, I'm real thankful for my time. It was a lot of fun working at that place and just developing the skills needed to even create a product. Like the diffs were breaking, and we had to come up with some sort of differential brace. So we made a few different versions of them, and working with Tony was real easy. We kind of had a way of talking without using words. We could just make a product what it needed to be pretty easily. And they still sell those products today.
Right. T1 and Boostlogic, they're separate entities?
Totally separate, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Boostlogic's in Austin. T1's in like Royce City, which, east of Dallas.
Okay.
Still, always kind of in the same playing field though, because they did GTRs. They both do V10 stuff now.
Yeah, they seem very linked.
Yeah, but they're just completely separate. They've got their own way of doing things and different products and stuff. But yeah, very thankful for my time there. It taught me a lot of stuff and just kind of just made a lot of things natural. I walk into this place with the same mindset every day that, we have the tools to build anything we want. We put our mind to it. So in like 2015, I decided to leave T1 and reopen dedicated full time, because in the background, I was still building this IS Swap parts. I had a whole room at my house dedicated, no pun intended, to making these products. And it seemed like the more I talked about it, the more I sold. So I kind of just had this natural inclination that I needed to do it. And because I was doing GM parts for the most part, it made sense for me to open a shop catered to GM cars. So I did that in 2015. And it definitely wasn't without a lot of hurdles. But we did some GTR stuff when I left T1 also, just naturally. Some people kind of try and follow you. They like you, it's going to happen. And we did set one world record that I'm pretty sure still stands today. We built a car for Mark Johnston that went 255.2 in the standing mile, which I know they're going pretty fast in the half mile now, but the standing mile is different. You're on like a road race slick, and you're not doing a burnout. There's no traction, you know.
And you're going twice as far.
Yeah, you have to sustain it because you have to cross that line at whatever speed you're trying to set. You know, you might hit, say, 260, but you can't keep the car together that long. And you're crossing. It's actually really dangerous. We never reattempted to set the record higher because of what I saw in the data. You know, we had shock potentiometers on all four corners, and the arrow was just smashing the front of the car to the ground, making it real unstable.
A lot of people underestimate the mile. I went there one time, and I'd say 50% of the cars that came in left on trailers.
Wow.
Or tow, rollbacks. It was definitely an experience that I wasn't ready for. I mean, we did good and we had success with the car we brought, but it wasn't a big power car either.
Right.
But that was definitely something that I think a lot of people don't realize is how much stress you're putting on a car. Right. And then at the mile an hour you're up there, people are like, oh, I've been 200. But have you in a big open area?
Yeah, the car
where
was
there's wind and
lateral G's and stuff going on. If you see it, you're like, dude, this car's driving sideways. Not only that, back then, the GTR all-wheel drive system, I guess we weren't able to control it with the Motec. So at 205, the front-wheel drive would shut off. It's purely rear-wheel drive after that. And that's when the arrow's smashing the car into the ground and the rear wheels are starting to spin. It's pretty dangerous.
Wow. Yeah. Do they still do that?
No, they have it all figured out now. They're all-wheel drive all the time.
And what kind of power do you think that car was making?
Like 16, 17.
And that was when?
2015 or 16, probably 16.
So,
damn.
6 years into the platform, you're already doing that?
And it probably could have made more, but we didn't really need it. And I was still a novice tuner when it came to tuning a GTR. That wasn't my job. That's Tony's job. So, I was just doing it because enough people wanted it. I thought it was the right thing to do, which I was still trying to focus on building my GM platforms, in my shop. We had a Cadillac that we were developing at that same time.
Before you go on the GM, you said you still hold the record, right? Because I seen it on your page, world's fastest GTR.
Yes, we still have that record. I'm nearly positive nobody's beat it. I know somebody tried, and he wrecked and was in the hospital for months.
Damn.
Yeah, those cars aren't really top end kind of cars. They're really good getting up to a certain point.
Yeah.
The half mile they do really well with.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody wants to try and beat it. I could be wrong.
Who's driving that car? That's the real question.
This Mark Johnston, the owner of the car, was driving it. And he asked me after that, because I'm a lot lighter. He's a pretty big guy. He's like, why don't you get in there and do it? I was like, dude, I'm looking at this data, and I don't want to drive that car. I was like, how big are your balls? Let me see. like you had to have, it was just.
That's what the passenger seat was for.
I wish I could
Laptop
explain
and the balls.
I wish I can explain what was happening to his car. It really needed to change a lot of stuff. Aero and suspension needed work to do that safely.
When you went to turbo the IS300, was that before or after you started dedicated?
So I did skip a part. I built the current IS300 that everybody kind of knows me for was built when I worked at T1. So, and I guess it's kind of important to touch on that too, because I built that IS300 the way I did to teach myself a lot of stuff. That car isn't designed to hold a 1,500 horsepower LS engine. So I took a 2002 IS300 that was bone stock, and I built a 10-point cage for it, and I put my swap kit in the car and put a forged 5.3 liter with a pair of 6266s and a Motec M150 and a dry shop 9-inch IRS rear end. And Tony helped, kind of help me with like how to set it up with fuel system, and he did the tuning on the Motec, and it was a manual car at the time. So eventually I got the car to go an 860 as a manual.
Dang. And what year?
So I had left T1. It was probably 2016 when I went the 860 in the car, because I definitely was.
Damn.
Yeah, cars weren't that fast. That's why I keep touching on the year, because that's real crucial.
I guess I don't think about it, and it does kind of all come together. But the first years of the shop were really challenging. It was like, you know how it is. It's a lifestyle. You live it every day. But yeah, I was doing it at Texas 2K. I was in the stick shift challenge. That's probably what one or two of these trophies is from, the stick shift challenge. And the 860 was the fastest I ever got it. It was a faceplated TR6060. It only had 4 gears.
still H pattern or
Still H pattern, but that chassis just did not like all that power.
Aren't they pretty short wheelbase?
They're narrow. I don't know the specs on it, but I do know it's kind of a narrow car.
Because I know I had a FC second gen RX-7.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the best one.
Yeah.
But I noticed on that car, I went to a Power Glide after I had it was a stick shift and it ran 990s, 980s, just all motor. And I ended up putting nitrous on it and put a Power Glide and it went like 890. But anything I went to try to push past that, the car would try to flip over.
Yes.
And I guess it was just short wheelbase is
I don't
what
think
everybody says.
wheelies were really never much of an issue. I probably did more wheelies in my C7 than I did in the IS.
C7 does wheelie kind of easy.
Yeah, it does.
I learned that the hard way.
But I did end up putting a glide in the IS300, and it went from an 860 to an 8.0. It was the fastest quarter I ever ran with it.
Same pretty much setup, just
trans
different.
I switched to an 88 millimeter single because I was doing a lot of no prep. So no prep was big in that like 2017, 2020 era. Like that's kind of when I was racing a lot. Dwayne Biddle started working for me at Dedicated, and he was big into no prep. He
still is.
Yeah, he lived around the corner from me, and like he was like, "Hey, I'm going to this race." I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna take my car too." So I kind of followed him to races and really enjoyed the no prep because damn, it was a driver mod. Like you better be pedaling it.
The no prep stuff just never sits right with me because I'm just like, man, you go out there with a really nice car and it's not when you wreck, like you're gonna wreck at some point.
But it's also a good place to be a tuner. You've got to kind of set the car
if you
up.
have the tools.
Yeah, you got to set the car up for what the surface looks like.
Yeah.
Watch the guy in front of you. So I had like a potentiometer. I could turn the power down or up as I needed, or even in the middle of the run. It was another scramble if the first scramble
Kind of like
wasn't
we're doing
enough.
with the smooth boost now. you
Yeah.
know? We're
Yeah,
like,
and I had a little bit of advantage with the Motec, although I wasn't using the traction control, but I was using it for power management.
yeah.
Back before Holly was really not taking off as much.
You always stuck with Motec.
Yeah, it's like Tony showed me the ropes as much as he could. As far as having the Motec on my Lexus, I figured it was the right way to go.
Yeah,
if you work at T1, you're probably gonna have a Motec on something.
Yeah. I mean, Motec is top tier.
Top tier, yeah.
And they have full CAN integration and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you so much more possibilities.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
So you did that, the turbo setup and all that. You left T1, did the turbo setup. Did I get that right?
I did all the work actually in
Turbo
T1.
T1,
I built that whole
then
car
dedicated.
there. But when I left T1, I still had twins on it. When I got to dedicated, probably a year and 2 years later, I revamped it to a twin set or a single setup.
What advantage do you think?
Well, the biggest thing was their shitty rules in the no prep community. They counted two turbos as two power adders. So
I remember with the V, they would tell me that.
yeah, so I was like, well, I'll just put one big one and we'll go to town.
They still do that?
I think they
It's certain places.
yeah.
They'll count it as two power adders. And I'm like, that's a little silly because most of the single turbo setups done right are faster.
Yeah, and you got factory suspension rules, so I had to stay independent rear suspension. I couldn't do a solid axle.
What's your opinion on the twins versus single? Because you've been around all that stuff. Like the Vs, they do really good with twins, but would a V do better with a single?
I don't really know if I could say, because I did go from fairly large twins to a rather large, GT55 single. I don't know if I noticed much difference.
Is
Packaging
it
was
spool rate
easier.
or is it anything like that? Or
I don't know. I think the twins can spool faster, especially with like new Zona technology. Having two decent sized twins is going to spool faster than a old school single.
what got you into the Zonas?
Well,
I blame you for me spending that money on
yeah,
this.
really is. When I worked at T1, we worked pretty closely with Robert at Force Performance. He was taking, Grady turbos and stuffing larger center sections and larger compressor covers on those housings for the GTRs, and just working with him made me realize that he knew what he was doing, and he was like really passionate about these turbos. So it was really cool just to be able to work with some of these people in the industry while I was working at T1 that kind of put me on to, no, these guys know what they're doing. Let's go with them.
That was something that we kind of discussed a little bit, and maybe since you've been in both, you can kind of cover this. We discovered on a previous podcast basically when I moved out to Puerto Rico and dealing with those people with the BMWs, deciding that I wanted to start tuning those as well. Everybody kind of works together. I've had a lot of shops reach out and offer to help me with the tuning and things like that. And in the GM world, it's not like that.
Right.
So I was very caught off guard. But while we were at the other podcast, I don't know if I can say who it was, they were like, well, when they started, it was Supras. So all of the Supra community would get on the forum and they would work together with other people to make parts, use this guy for this, use this guy for this. But everybody networked really well.
Yeah.
And in GM, I've never seen that.
Well, I'll tell you this. A lot of people like to network with Tony Pela. Like,
Well, yeah, anybody would. But I'm just talking about in the community as a whole. Like you go to the track and you're working with a Supra or something like that. Everybody seems to kind of want to help and everybody wants to go fast.
yeah.
And it seemed like that was always the case. But then in the GM, you see everybody kind of sticks to themselves. And there's a few of us that'll go around and help, no problem. But it's very rare, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, heck, you've even helped me. It was probably 5 years ago or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what was going on. I wasn't shifting right. You're like, oh, just try this. And it worked, So you helped me and we didn't even know each other. If anything, we were competing together that day, probably.
But I always want the best for everybody. But
we want good competition.
it's just, it's kind of weird that most of people in the GM domestic, totally, Ford, Dodge, they don't network. They don't work together. And I feel like that's something that definitely holds them back.
We've got a lot more shops in the GM world. You got a lot of guys trying to make it. And I will say, just from the parts manufacturing standpoint of things, people are more willing to work with you when you're supplying them with a part that helps them. So I feel like I probably get a little more inside scoop on things or a little less biasness to. Plus, I haven't been racing a lot lately, so they're not worried about me coming out there and beating them. But it is harder to have that sort of grassroots, camaraderie in the GM world.
Yeah, I guess it just seems like even back in the days of 2K, when they were just kind of starting, everybody was working together. And that's what they said on the copper car. Everybody wanted to help.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to just see everybody do really well. And then it was hard for me to hear that because I'm just like, man, in the GM world, my first 5 years, just like I think any tuner will tell you, I mean, I don't know how I stayed doing it.
It's a battle, yeah.
Yeah, the first 5 years, I wanted to quit so many times. And I'm like, I know I can do this. I wanted to try harder.
Yeah,
But
realistically, the passion will pull you through it, which is what I've learned.
do you feel like that's still here today?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like there may be times where, we're almost 10 years into Dedicated now, and there would be times where I'm like, damn, I'm really tired. I'm just going to sit back for a little while. And it seems like the moment I do that, I come up with a new product idea, and it really reinvigorates what I do. And then the process of maybe, developing that product and testing it, it really just lifts my spirits back up. So I'm thankful for that. And walking in here every day and seeing these products definitely helps with that.
We're thankful for it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was when I first started hearing about you and seeing a lot of it was the V World. So I guess what got you into the V World? Other than it's the best GM platform, hands down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a V to do development with, and we weren't planning on building a race car, doing anything. We were just planning on doing some fabrication items because my background's fabrication. Let's build some ice tanks and maybe some small billet products because when I had the shop in Austin, we had access to a CNC machine. And we were able to make like the coolant manifolds for the lids, which, we have one right here. So this is a -16 version, but
Yeah.
the first one we ever did was a -12 version. And we still make those, obviously, but
Because factory, they have just like a push lock.
yeah, like it's like a hose clamp. And going to AN not only allowed us to increase the diameter, but to make plumbing one a lot easier, especially doing a trunk
90
tank.
degrees and things like that too.
Yeah. So, if you have a car that you're building for yourself, obviously you're going to want to develop products for it. And that's why I'm going to buy another one today, is we want to be able to develop products and test new things out. Obviously, we have a few products here, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
What about the C6 ZR1s? Because they share a similar engine structure.
Yeah.
What kept you from that instead of this?
Well, for some reason, when we were in Austin, we had a lot of C6 ZR1 customers. San Antonio and Austin. I don't know why, but there's a lot of C6ZR ones there.
Yeah, we went
I don't
to.
know why either. No.
I don't know why.
We went to Lethal. We did the podcast with Lethal, and there was 13
Yeah.
1301.
C601s. I was like, man, I don't think I've seen that many in real life.
Best
Yeah.
Corvette ever.
Ever.
It is. It's such a cool car, but they're all manuals, and I wanted to do a lot of drag racing, and I had already transformed the Lexus from a manual to an auto, so I was like, man, I don't want no more of these manuals.
So that's what it was.
I was over it, yeah. So I wanted to do an auto, and the V platform, the community just seemed to be large. You had the CTSV club; they're doing all these races together. It just seemed like a good place to kind of get my foot in the door, and I had to have a car to do it.
Because you were up here by Mike Franks.
Well, I wasn't. I was still in Austin.
Oh, okay.
But they blended the San Antonio division and the DFW division with Austin. So we would kind of go to San Antonio for some events. We go to DFW for some events.
For people that don't know what the V Club is, if you want to.
Well, yeah, the V Club is started by Mike Franks, and he kind of just brings people together for cruises, barbecues. I think once a year they host the V Invitational, where he rents out Ennis, Texas, Ennis drag strip, and we have multiple classes of drag racing, which you and I have competed together again in that class. I don't.
That's where he got my record.
Yeah,
He beat the 6L record
the
there
6L90 record, which
on the
I don't-
sixth pass
yeah.
of the car being built.
Those-
Very impressive.
Those Zona turbos. That's what turned you on.
I bought a set a few weeks after for Wendy's car.
Because we were able to launch without a trans brake and actually get off the line fairly good with a fairly quick spooling turbo.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just the V platform is a lot of fun.
Yeah,
And
the V Club was really cool because he had a lot of inside knowledge with GM as well.
Yeah.
So the first Escalade V that came out, because we were part of the V Club, we got to see it before a lot of people actually got to see it.
Damn, that's awesome.
he does like this driving academies and stuff, and he does a lot of giveaways, and we do like Christmas dinners and stuff. It's a lot of fun. If you have a CTSV, you should definitely look into the.
It was super
Damn.
cool.
I didn't even know about the
CTSV
club
club.
when I had a V.
Yeah,
Damn.
yeah. If
That's,
you-
but that's when, like I said, everybody in the V, they kind of work together. A lot of people.
Yeah.
The V platform in the earlier days, I think, was probably one of the best group of people. I mean, you had a few people that were the outliers, but for the most part, everybody really just wanted to see everybody succeed.
Yeah. I think for me too, to kind of touch on Texas 2K, the first one I ever went to was 2005. So I'm kind of an OG when it comes to what Texas 2K was. And I went there not even planning on attending the event. I rode with a friend just to buy a car, and then I ended up not buying the car, and I stayed for the whole event and got kind of stuck there and realized how cool it was. So the thing about Texas 2K though was I was able to usually build a new car every year to go test and throw it into the gauntlet of street racing, and it was just a really good test bed for like, what have you learned over this last year? Mm-hmm. So we still treat it that way, even though it's changed a lot.
How do you think it's changed?
It's mostly geared for hardcore drag racers. Like you've got the GTR classes, the V10 classes, and then you've got the street class, which has some incredibly fast cars in it. I remember in the V, I qualified like, I don't know, it was like 20th in the second streetcar class, and I went an 850 or something, 860.
This last year when they were doing it at Ennis, I was like, oh, maybe I'll run the C7 in it. And he's like, submit your times. And I think I had like an 850 slip. And he's like, yeah, it's not fast enough. I said, I'm sorry, the street class?
yeah,
That's not fast enough.
yeah.
I'm like,
the whole first class is like 6s and 7s. If you ain't-
it's crazy.
Yeah, so cars have just gotten faster, which rightfully so. As an event grows like this, you're going to start pulling in the fastest guys. So it's definitely the Super Bowl of racing, whichever it's on the street or on the track.
Right.
It's the Super Bowl.
What years were the best?
Man, I would say probably like 06, 05 to 10, somewhere in that range, because Houston PD had not understood what we were doing.
Yeah.
So
Like back in the Omni days.
the Omni days.
Everybody
yeah.
meet up at the Omni or the Marriott. And
Yeah, that was definitely a good time. You could roll out with 10 cars and nobody thought you were doing anything funny.
Well, and also nobody was doing sideshows and stuff like that either,
Yeah,
though.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It seemed like the last year in Houston, they had somebody somewhere did a bunch of sideshow stuff, and the police wanted to prove a point. And that's why the last year in Houston, I didn't do one race at all. That's the first year of 2K I actually didn't race
Yeah, we don't go
because
on
the police
street.
were that bad.
Yeah, I haven't done street stuff in a handful of years for that reason.
Yeah.
It's too much to lose,
Yeah.
this
Right.
and everything. So
But back then, we were just
yeah,
dumb kids with cars that were faster than they should have been.
yeah. Now it's more about I go out there more to support my customers and have spare parts on hand and that sort of thing. So it's just more fun. It's a lot less fun racing at.
It seems like Texas 2K back then was like something, you said you built your swap Lexus, right? And you
Yeah.
drove it. And it seemed more kind of, how do you say it?
It was so small, or
Yeah.
it was smaller that you kind of knew everybody. Everybody knew you. They expect to see you there.
Yeah.
Guys come from other states, and you're just like, "Hey, man, good to see you."
Yeah.
So it's just grown a lot. It's a lot larger.
Right.
Still an amazing event, but back then it was just like kind of more grassroots, I guess you could say.
Right.
But then you still had big people coming out, like Titan would come every year. MVP Motorsports. I mean, these guys have been supporting the event for 20 years, and you go out there to see that copper car make a hit. You want to see the big dogs. People go there to see T1 and AMS go head to head and set world records and that sort of thing.
Right.
And they do it every year, don't
Yeah, they do. So it really hasn't changed in that aspect. It's just bigger, badder cars.
Yeah. And now you see like more about, now it's more of GTRs, R8s, Lambos.
Lambos, yeah. Tons of GTRs. They have
Tons
like
of
4 or 5 GTR classes.
Yeah.
they? Now they have a bunch of Supra classes and
Yeah.
stuff like that, too.
It is cool to see the next generation Supra come and have a class, and they're pretty damn fast and competitive too.
That was something we had touched on, was how new the platform is and how fast they've already gotten in the 7s.
Yeah.
So, you can't compare the motor to a 2JZ because people are sensitive on that. But
And we didn't touch on it either. I mean, from 07 to 09, I had Mark IV Supras. So I was taking Supras to the national event as well.
so you're big on the 2JZ?
Yeah, I had 9 of them. It's just really weird for me to have an LS in my Lexus. I got a lot of shit for that over the years.
Really?
But I did it purely to be different,
Yeah.
to develop dedicated motorsports, to keep it alive. Because if it wasn't for doing that, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I put a 2J in it, I'd just be another guy with a 2J IS300.
Yeah, that's true.
And LS swaps weren't really that common yet.
No.
Yeah.
And it was really the RX-7 one that kind of stimulated that concept. I built an RX-7 and it was like ridiculously fast, making 350 wheel, with the LS1 in it. So I just took that same concept and applied it to the IS300.
What would they tell you on the swap though?
Oh, they'd be like, why would you take a 2JZ out of an IS300 only to put a shitty LS1 in it? What they don't know is that the 2J that's in an IS300 can maybe hold 400 horsepower tops. It's not like the one that comes out of the Supras.
Right.
So it was more about making a car for like hooning around and just
What made you not stick with the Supras?
really starting my company. I sold my last Supra to start dedicated. I needed capital, and I had like an 800 horse 94 hardtop that was worth a bit of money, about 4 times less than it is worth now.
Yeah.
I think I sold it for like 33 grand. It's probably worth 100 now.
Yeah.
But I sold it to start dedicated, to buy a dyno, to buy a welder, to buy a compressor, a few first months rent so I could start making money.
Yeah.
It was a sacrificial sale, but no regrets.
Back then, with the whole 2K, they also used to have the Invitational,
Yes.
which I love that event. The Invitational, I think, and they had the Quick 30.
Yeah, the Quick 30 also. Yeah.
And you used to attend those or no?
Yeah, it was mostly because I worked at T1, because they got, they got invited out to those races, and Tony's like, dude, run your Lexus in these events. So I would always, most of the time it was the auto or the manual that I'd run the Lexus in the events, but it was pretty cool running like a, 1500 horsepower Lambo or GTR next to me, and I'm in this IS300.
Yeah.
Banging gears, mind you, too. It was a lot of fun. And then like one year, I'll never forget. So I had just built the Lexus, and when you build something like that, there's a lot of bugs to work out. You know, I had never put that much power into that chassis. And AMS had won the Texas Invitational, but they hurt her motor in the process. And they had rented Baytown the following couple of days before they drove back to Chicago. And I think Tony and Martin of AMS were talking, and he's like, well, come out to the shop. You can use it to swap the motor out. And I said, yeah, I'll help you. And the tech at the time, I think his name is Sean, was like, oh, I don't know, man. You know, I work on this car. I was like, well, I'll just be there to show you where things are. And then I started helping him, and he's like, okay, man, you really know what you're doing. Let's do this together. So we swapped the engine out, and they're real thankful for that. And they're like, dude, come out to the Baytown rental with me. And I was like, hey, Tony, can I have a couple of days off, you know? So I went down there and did the track rental with them. And I think I went like my first like 940 or something. It was still a synchronized TR6060. And so I was getting these opportunities to develop the car, and I wouldn't have had those opportunities had I not been working there. You know, so it was pretty cool to help push that platform a little bit.
Was there a long learning spell of things breaking or?
I don't know if it was necessarily things breaking. It was just more chassis. Like I had to build custom lower control arms and get with Mincer to get. I actually originally had built my own coilovers just using AFCO shocks, and eventually I sent them off to Mincer to get them valved properly. But like I said, that was a big platform for learning how can I make this that nobody else makes, which has helped in developing our own products for GM cars nowadays. So
And now they don't have the Invitational, which kind of they don't have Baytown either. Though.
yeah. So they were doing the Invitational at Caddo Mills Airport, an airstrip not that far, maybe
I've been there.
maybe 15 minutes from T1. So it was definitely like a home track for us.
That was a pretty cool area out there. It's by Rockwall, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real close to Rockwall.
Yeah. So you got in with the V2 and you started kind of developing parts. I guess did you start just the trunk tanks and things like that? When did you start getting into like the pulley stuff and the more intricate things?
So
When you were making the trunk tanks, was was Auto Wheels creating them as well?
I think Aldo
the
Wells
time?
was making them. He was doing like a rule bilge pump inside the tanks. And I had a couple of them come in. I just wasn't a huge fan of it, so I kind of wanted to do my own stuff.
Right.
Which even back then, there was really only one pump that you could use on the outside, which was the EMP. And so we decided to build a tank based around that pump. So that's the thing. You know, you've always got somebody out there that's making something, but when you know you can make it, you want to try and make it better. You don't want to just do the same thing.
Right.
So.
Did y'all fight the whole billet lid thing where they don't
We
open?
did, yeah. Yeah, I even made some of my own billet lids, which actually worked. But they're just so expensive to manufacture. We use a plastic lid on most of them.
Yeah. I remember the one with the orange spinny ring.
Yeah.
Was always the best one.
Yeah, that was the only one that worked.
But nobody
good.
really makes them.
It mostly has to do with the way when you bolt it down, it flexes it, and then it gets in a bind.
Okay.
So
I was wondering why more people didn't use that.
yeah, if you could bolt a lid down and keep it kind of just ever so slightly snug, then the lid will always work for the most part.
Nice. What was your question before I interrupted?
How I got into making the billet stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
For the V2. Yep. So we did when we were in Austin, we shared the shop with a CNC machine shop. They built forged wheels, and they had a few CNC machines and engineers there that could kind of take an idea and run with it. So I was working with those guys to develop, like, for instance, that cooling manifold was the first thing. And then we made some cooling manifolds for the LS9 lid also. And then we were also making some of our own bungs and fittings and weird things to make our tanks a little nicer. So it just kind of started real naturally there. But with some shit that I really can't talk about, we had to leave that shop, and they're no longer open either. So it took a while for me to get back under being able to manufacture my own products. It was probably almost 3 years, actually, when we moved here to Weatherford. I downloaded Fusion 360 and got on YouTube and started learning how to do my own CAD drawings since I didn't have any engineers around. And I had a fairly long list of things I wanted to make. And even some new things popped up as you start drawing in CAD, you start to become more creative. You know, you're like, oh, well, I could really make this. Nobody even makes this, you know? And it is hard to not get, how do you say it? Like, it's when somebody copies your product, you kind of just want to throw the towel in. You're like, why am I even doing this? That was a true original idea and somebody copied it. But you're just going to have that. You have to learn that people are going to do it and they're doing it for whatever reason they do it for. And you just have to keep being, you just have to keep wanting to come up with something new. You're like, oh, I'll show them. I'll come up with something new that nobody else has. So I put a lot of focus into that.
But that's common in this industry.
It is. And it, you know, it's common in a lot of industries. I'm also in the side-by-side UTV industry, and it's huge in that industry. I mean, the first thing I came out with was copied almost immediately. This oil filler for the Polaris Pro R. I made it. A guy bought one, and boom, he had his own version of it right away. And It's almost identical, down to the thumb screw and everything. Wow. And this was a true, unique idea because on a Polaris Pro R, you have to remove the bed to gain access for filling the oil. Well, if you have speakers and gear and all kinds of stuff, you don't want to remove that just to change your oil or top your oil off. So I saw back of the machine, there's like on the engine, there's a port for accessing timing chain tensioner. And I was like, well, shoot, we can make a port for that. So that's what I did. I made a little spot you could fill it with oil. But yeah, you get copied and you're just like, well, you just have to chalk it up to that's how life goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes that could be the most challenging part is your own mental hurdles. You know, how can I keep doing this if every time I come up with something cool, somebody's going to copy me? But
is there any way to protect against it?
You know, a lot of people they're like, well, just do a patent. Well, most patents are easy to work around. For one, they cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. And secondly, you have to go defend yourself. You know, just because you have a patent and somebody copies your product, you still have to go after them. It's not like the government does it. You know, like you have to go say like to a court, hey, this guy copied this and this is why. And you have to prove that it's an exact copy.
Because they can change one thing and
one thing. So it's really not worth it. It's really, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, just keep your head up and keep going and keep developing the next thing. If you're the guy that's coming out with the new stuff, people are going to pay attention.
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching it since the beginning, I believe 15, and all the issues we would kind of have in the community, and then give it a month or so, and then boom, there's a solution out there. So it really helped out a lot. And I mean, as you can see, the amount of products that you've come up with is pretty extensive. Yeah. And it fixed a lot of the issues that we had.
You're going to have things that are similar. I mean, for instance, a trunk tank. There's only, you're not copying somebody if you're making a trunk tank because there's 10 different ways you can do it. Same with engine bay tanks. You know, everybody's got their own design. Yeah, there might only be one spot you could put that tank in that chassis, but I don't really consider that copying, you know.
I mean, yeah, there's only so many ways you can make a box of water.
Yeah, exactly. So there are things. There's some original ideas like that oil filler for the Polaris. You know, it really sucks because you knew it was an original idea, but otherwise, you know, it is what it is. We just want to make the best stuff possible.
I think one of the cooler things was the idler relocation.
Oh yeah.
So we could put more boost.
Yeah. So at one point, so this particular relocation bracket, which you really can't see back here, does move this upper pulley up 5 millimeters, which is the only one that does it. I think there's like probably 10 of those brackets, but we're the only one that actually raises that upper pulley up. Of course, we make all these pulleys so you could do 10 ribs. This is a 10 rib setup. You know, from the factory, they're 8. And then GM discontinued the tensioner bracket, so we made it out of billet, which really does two things. That not only you can buy it now because GM discontinued
rigidity.
Rigidity, yeah. That tensioner is holding this belt, especially the 2650. It's under a lot of load, and it does flex. So I actually outsourced the drawing on that so that they could use analysis to make sure that it's going to flex the least amount possible. because I'm not proficient in that. I might be able to draw stuff in CAD, but I don't understand how the analysis side works. So
You run the 70 mil lower still?
So that's a factory 70 mil or factory size 70 mil, just in a 10 rib thickness.
Okay.
You know, if the relo keeps the lower pulley away from the harmonic balancer pulley, that 70 mil is only creating more belt wrap. And it also helps with RPM, because when you go down to that 50 mil, that we obviously sell 50 mils too, because there's times where you just have to use one. But I mean, that 50 mil is spinning at like 40,000 RPM.
Yeah, I've seen the bearings have issues in them. I mean, they're relatively easy to swap the bearings, so it wasn't a huge issue, but I've seen that, and I guess the 70 was, I guess, just the right size, so the RPM's
Well, it
good.
drops at, 8,000 RPM or something like that.
Okay.
So in our 50s, we actually use an Eaton supercharger bearing, where the bearings are like almost $30 a piece, but we know they're supposed to handle like 44,000 RPM.
Was it always like that, or did you do that after a while?
We came up with that 50 mil based on Metco had a 50 mil that instead of doing a reload bracket, they would just give you a 50 mil for like, say, a 9.5 or whatever.
I think that's the one I used.
Yeah, so if you had anything bigger than a 9.1, you had to change that lower pulley to a 50. And I think it was Metco was sending them out, but they didn't do anything with the bearing, and they would just explode constantly. So I was like, well, a lot of these guys need these 50s. LS9 guys run them a lot just to get their belt length right, because on an 11 rib belt, you're really limited on your sizes. I was like, well, I'll make it if I can get like a better bearing. So I did my research on bearings and tested a few of them, and we do say that they won't last forever, but they last a lot longer than the other options.
But that's something that makes y'all a lot different because, and I've noticed that through the products through the years, because I'm big on testing everything, and I'm a natural super skeptic.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that. But the 50 mil I had locked up, and when I pulled the bearing out, it was just a $8 parts store bearing.
Right. Wow. Cheap bearings.
So, but I did know that I've built a lot of cars, and we might have got spicy with a 10.5 lower.
Yeah.
And we've run your 50 before, and I've never had one of those fail.
Yeah,
so I knew there was something different, but I didn't know what it was.
This is a 10. If you went to the 10.5, you'd have to put a 50. Yeah. So you're forced to run that 50.
Right. But that's something I thought was really cool. Like even the design of that idler.
Right.
Like you could have made a simple idler, but that looks way cooler.
Yeah.
It looks like a rim.
We did try and make stuff look cool. I mean, it's kind of like we were saying, it's not necessarily copying. There's like 6 or 8 people that make 100 millimeter upper idlers, but I wanted my own version, make it look cool, make it as high quality as possible.
Right. That little extra dedication
Touch, yeah.
really, it does show in the products a lot. Like we were talking about that inlet.
The dash 16?
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference on that one.
Yeah, it's hard to see it, but instead of just drilling a straight hole here and a straight hole here, we actually contoured the inside. You can see it there. Did a lot of contour work so that the water flows freely.
Little things like that, people that do this so much, we test a lot of things. That's enough for me.
Yeah.
That could be twice the price of anybody else's and might still pay for it.
Right. Yeah, we're all about.
Would you pay for it?
Huh? I just said I would.
It's going to be missing later.
Oh, I would. I bought plenty of this stuff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Same with the pulleys. There's probably 3 or 4 places to make the pulleys. I wanted to make my own in the sizes I wanted.
Yeah.
So, as you kind of become dedicated to a platform, you want to be able to supply all of the stuff people need in one house. I mean, we outsource very little.
Can you talk about the LT4 record before it was broken?
Yeah, so, a big deal with these cars is like, how fast can you go on a stock supercharger? And I'm all about testing things and really kind of, me, I kind of have to have like a goal in mind. If I have a goal in mind, I'll be able to set my sights on it, and that's the driving motivation to get there.
Right.
So I guess there was a lot of talk about who's the fastest guy on a stock blower. And I saw this other shop, which, maybe we just leave them nameless for now.
Who's the shop?
They had took their shop race car and basically pulled a Pro Charger off of it and bolted a heavily ported LT4 blower on it. And I think they went out and went an 870 or an 860, somewhere in that range. Yeah, I think it was 870, somewhere in that range of 870, 860. And I saw it, and I was like, damn. I was like, I could probably beat that. I was like, but I'm going to do it with my car, which is a street car, stock engine, stock trans. I wanted to see what I could do. So I did take some weight out of it. I put like strange brakes on it because obviously the competition already had these weight reduction mods. Mm-hmm. I put a Kirky seat in it, and I'd actually set out to build a 388 engine with like super high compression, like 12.5 to 1 compression. Because I'm like, well, we could push a big motor, and this little 1.7 blower can get us to this goal. We're gonna blow them out of the water. Well, while I was waiting on pistons to be made, I was like, let's go ahead and go test it with the stock engine. So we actually did it at Texas 2K, and I can't remember which year it was. It may have been, I want to say it was like 17 or 18, maybe even 19, but this all kind of running together now. But we went out there, and I soon realized, I'm like, shit, the competition set this record in a track rental. The weather was nicer. It was earlier in the year, and Texas 2K was getting hot. I mean, you know how it is. It's Houston. Shit's hot. Sometimes you have good DA, but sometimes you really don't. Yeah. And I went out there, and I broke a stub axle my first pass, and the stub was stuck in the rear diff. Like, you're supposed to have to take the diff apart to get that out. And I was like, you know what? We're just going to sit around here. I'm going to help my customers. I was still tuning for everybody's cars because I am the tuner dedicated. So I'm already busy. My car, it's not a big deal. We'll go back and do a track rental and beat this record. Well, I have a lot of motivating friends. And Wade, who was working at T1, saw my post about braking. He's like, bro, we have a welder here. He's like, why don't you weld something to that stub and get it out? I'm like, dude, it's 2 inches in the diff. And it's way off in the car. Like, how am I going to get a welder in there and get something welded to it? Well, we had some downtime, probably some oil downs or something. And I went over to T1. I was like, can I borrow your welder? They gave it to me. And we went over and hooked it up to my generator. And somebody had to operate the pedal while I was trying to weld a bolt to this stub that was broken, this diff. Damn. And I never thought it was going to work. But I got that damn bolt welded to that diff. And I used a pry bar, and I pulled the stub out. It's actually sitting up there. It's on the trophy stand. That the bolt welded to it still. See it? And I got it out, and I was like, holy shit. Dry Shaft Shop had saw my post. They overnighted me a pair of stubs, so in case I broke it, I'd have a backup. So we got the car all back together, and we made it. I think we made it to qualifying for the street car class. And I said, you know what? I think launching in first gear is what's breaking this stub. I'm going to launch in second, and I'm going to be easy off the line. I was so nervous. And I launched in second. I did a 1.2 60 foot and went at 860 and took the record that very first pass.
Damn.
And we also qualified for the street car class, which was really cool. And we barely beat the record by, a tenth and a half, but we still did it.
Yeah.
And I guess the dramatic, rising up dramatically through that, getting through all the failures was pretty cool too. And then we ended up getting second place in the streetcar class, and I only lost because I red lit. Oh. I beat the other guy by car lengths, and I only lost the streetcar class because of that. So, wow. And the car went 860s consistently at that point.
Was that a stock diff or?
It was an RPM diff.
So wave track?
It was a wave track with a 256 gear. We changed the gearing a little because fifth gear sucks so bad. We're trying to circumvent that.
A what?
A 256.
Oh.
Yes, was stock's
241 or 273?
That's a 241, I think.
Okay.
So we didn't want to go as aggressive as a 273 at the time.
Yeah, I tried that.
Yeah, keep in mind it was a long time ago. It was a long time ago, but we ended up going an 844, I think was the fastest we ever went. And that we held that record for like 3 years before LMP beat it with like an 841. I think they're probably down to 820 something now.
Yeah.
But it took a lot of time. And we did that with a stock trans and engine too.
Wow.
It was just a heads cam LT4.
Yeah, that little blower's got a lot of hit. Because a lot of people ask me, they're like, oh, 2650 or LT4 blower. And I'm like, depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're 8th mile racing, the stock blower is going to win.
And you know, that was a
2650 is awesome, but it works up top. It's not the best on the bottom.
that was the first like export from Kong, and it was hand done. He was like, "Don't tell anybody this is out there." It had epoxy in it, you know. Shame on everybody, but it worked. It worked really well, and I had a 5-inch intake tube going to a 8-inch bell mouth in the front bumper. Like that picked up 100 horse doing that intake.
Really?
Wow.
Literally 100 horse.
We're gonna talk after this.
Yeah, it worked. Had to cut the frame a little bit, you know, but
I don't care. I don't need the frame.
had a little Honda radiator off to one side. Yeah, it was, but it's you got to do what you got to do, you know.
Yeah.
And it worked well. You know, street cars.
Could
now,
you drive it around like that with the radio?
I drove it. Yeah, it was scary as shit because it would chatter the tires on a hit.
We're definitely talking after this.
Yeah.
I'm down for a small radiator.
What intake do you have on your car? Like a Rotofab?
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're about to go fast. Faster.
But speaking about radiators, the CSF.
Yeah, so for a while we were manufacturing our own heat exchangers in-house, which meant we were sourcing cores from places like DeWitt's effectively or CNR. They'll sell you cores also, which CNR makes probably one of the best cores out there. They're really nice cores. But damn, those are hard to weld. There's a lot of prep time, and they're just challenging to weld. You got to pressure test them afterwards. It's a lot of work. So, you know, we probably did that for 3 years or so, and it was hard to keep up with the demand of manufacturing radiators. And, you know, there's always only been one fabricator here at Dedicated, whether it's been someone that works here or for like a year and a half, it was me exclusively. And I was doing it way too much work, and I was working 7 days a week. But around that time of me being the only fabricator, I was like, screw this, man. I need to find somebody that can make these heat exchangers for me. So we saw Ravi from CSF. I can't remember if I saw him at like PRI or what, but we talked about private labeling these heat exchangers. And he said, man, just build me a jig of what you want and ship it to me and we'll make it. So we created this partnership where I was able to make the V2, CTSV was the first one. And then, let me back up. No, the C6ZR1 was the first one. The C7 was next. And then the V2, and then the V3. So we made heat exchangers for those four, which was just supplying CSF with a jig and a design, and then working with them on a private label for our own heat exchangers. And we sell a ton of them now. And they're super high quality. They're all tested and packaged very well. It's really found somebody that could do it better than we could. So
Probably a lot easier to ship them too, since they come packaged to ship naturally.
And they were just able to do things that I couldn't do with the either the tools or the skill or the time that we had available.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful to have that relationship, and we've grown it a lot over the years. It's definitely one of the best heat exchangers on the market, and our customers are proving that. So they do a lot of like OEM style testing because CSF is an OEM level manufacturer. So they do like a salt and rock shot test. Like I'll never forget the first C7 one. We had actually built that down in Austin. So that was over 6 years ago. It was probably 7 years ago. This guy did a gumball rally with one of our very first C7 heat exchangers. And he came back after the rally. He's like, man, I think I got a misfire, and I just want you to check everything out, which he had just like burned a spark plug wire. But I looked at the front of his car. I'm like, dude, what were you doing? He's like, man, we're running 150 miles an hour, nose to tail. And the front of the car was just beat to shit. I'm telling you, we have logos on our heat exchangers. It was gone.
Damn.
The tubes had gigantic dents in it. And I'm looking at it like, how is this not leaking? And I guess it has something to do with the way to design the cores to take the punishment of an OEM vehicle, that they can take these big hits and not leak.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which was insane. I mean, I should have saved it. We replaced it. I was like, I want to see it, but I never saved it. I should have.
Well, you say OEM, but I had a C7ZR1 caught a rock at the track.
Just perfect and probably leaked.
And popped the left cooler.
Yeah.
And it started spraying. I'm like, what are the odds of that?
I've seen it happen too, but that's why when that one was just hammered to shit, I couldn't believe that it was still working.
What other manufacturers do you carry around here? Or any other partnerships?
So we work as far as like heat exchangers, we do work with like CNR still. They make some pretty nice intercooler bricks for the supercharger lids. We do quite a few bricks with them, really, because otherwise we're supplying a lot of OEM bricks. So we get the intercooler bricks for LSAs, and we reinforce them with plates on the backside. But otherwise, aside from the OEM, CNR is really the only other option. There's a new option. Antoine Hobbs at A Hobbs Racing is coming out with his own, and we have yet to get our hands on one, but they are available. They seem to be pretty nice. So looking forward to working with him more too.
Another big company that was like building parts for the GM world.
Extreme is
Weapon X.
Weapon
Oh,
X,
Weapon
yeah,
X,
Weapon-
yeah.
Oh boy.
It was there. What?
Nothing. Ben. I think Ben Herndon. I don't know how you say his name. That's who owns that.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with them.
My experience was, I mean, they did come out with a lot of innovative stuff,
Yeah,
and
they have been around a long time too.
they've been around a long time. And something over the last few years, I don't know if he disappeared or.
Man, they actually buy stuff from us, and I have seen orders
Still?
come in. Yeah, we got an order. It's probably been 5-6 weeks, but he does.
Have you
They're-
bought anything from him?
Well, they don't necessarily have anything I want, I guess. Because like we make a lot of our own stuff, and I don't really do any body stuff. Like they sell a lot of hoods and things like that. But,
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
but they are still in business.
I've got a bunch of customers that are waiting.
I have seen it.
Thousands of dollars of orders and just can't even get an email back.
You go search the name on the forum, and there's plenty of them. So I don't know.
But they
what's
did
going
really
on.
good in the beginning, I thought, and they had a lot of cool, different,
Yeah,
innovative stuff. And
They did.
It
for
sucks
sure.
to see somebody that has so much potential potentially not make it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Personal.
'cause I thought
or-
they were going to be there forever. 'Cause
They still
seemed
pull
like
up
it.
on a Google search. You search one of our products even. They might show up. Or Motorsports. There's
When I was like looking for stuff for my V, at the time, like Weapon X was like the big dog, Like,
Yeah.
But there were also on the pricier side.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is having inventory. I think that's probably something that hurt them was they had a lot of back orders going on, and I think that's still what it is. I mean, when we see these posts about the negative side of Weapon X is that these guys are like, man, I ordered this stuff and I haven't gotten it. It's been 6-8 months.
Damn.
And I can't even do anything about it. So for me, it definitely has always shined the light on if you're going to sell something, you better have it in your possession. For us on our website, if we don't have it, it either notates it or we remove it. Like if it's not available, it's gone. We'll just put it on the back end and bring it back if we can get inventory on it.
Right.
So I think being up front with your customers is probably number one. Like, hey, this is a 3-week build time. It is build to order.
that's why I always try to tell people, like, if it's like Sean Hamilton doing the 10-speed stuff, I was like, I don't mind making the post because I drove it. I liked it. It was really cool. I was like, but understand that when I make that post, you're going to get phone calls.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
going to be looking for it. And this, I don't have the biggest following, but I have a big enough following that if you don't have the parts, it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, I think with something like that, I would probably expect a little bit of a lead time, maybe 3 or 4 weeks tops.
Which
Probably.
I think he's done that. He gave out the lead time, and he's been, so far that I've seen, he's been meeting it and all that. But a lot of people, I'll tell them that, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's not a big deal," and then it starts hitting them, and then I've seen a business go
Better be
under
ready.
from that.
Yeah, you better be ready, or just be up front. People love that. Just be up front. Be like, hey, check it out. We've got 6 of these. They're spoken for. Yours is 2 or 3 weeks down the road.
Yeah, as long as you tell them.
Yeah, my biggest thing too is I tend to not talk about things until they're ready. I've done it before where I'm like, oh yeah, we're coming out with this. Well, then not only does that give your competition a little heads up, but it also, the customer's like, hey, when can I have it? When can I have it? And it kind of starts to already create muddy waters. So most of these products that we have here, we didn't talk about them until they're already here. I might have 100 sitting on a shelf, and
So you don't preempt it for like a year,
No,
year and a half, and
definitely
still have no date
That's a
in sight.
long
I
time.
can't stand that. I can't stand it because it bothers me, and I imagine it bothers customers.
Coming out
a
with
lot.
this really cool product. Just wait.
Just wait.
That's been a year.
Well, wait-
Just wait.
Wait longer.
It's still coming.
You're doing a podcast. Just wait. Oh, not that. Sorry.
That's me and you. Hey, when are you dropping this one? Just wait.
Yeah.
Like, bro, that was a month ago.
Yeah. Takes time.
Yeah,
Yeah, good shit takes time.
Right.
But that's one reason we do the in-house fabrication. Like, this is kind of stupid because it's made for like a 03 to 06 Chevy Tahoe or something like that. But nobody else made it. And I had a turbo Tahoe that had an air-to-water intercooler. I wanted a nice tank. Actually bolts on the passenger side up against the firewall.
I was about to say I thought that was really cool, and a lot of people would buy the hell out of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know about being stupid.
It's just funny because you're talking about these old Tahoes. Mine was actually a quadra-steer Suburban.
Those were really cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. But, we do the CAD design in-house. These billet bosses were actually CNC machines specifically for this product at the right height. So they're cut, formed, welded, and then my friend John Counts powder coats all of our stuff.
Are those still on the website?
Yeah.
Because you're about to sell them out.
You could buy these. I think I got 6 of them.
Damn.
You know they all about to be checking it out. He's got a big truck following.
Yeah. It's a slow. Yeah, we make some cool truck stuff, and to try and help the truck community, we've made some universal stuff like those little square.
Oh yeah.
I don't know it's just a universal water tank, but
Yeah.
What about these? Talk about those, because that was something that kind of hit me from the side. I didn't even know about them.
Yeah.
And I had seen one on a car, and his temps were significantly better. I was like, man, where are you getting this cooling from? He's like, oh, I have a tank in the fender. I'm like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so I mean, shoot, it was probably 7 or almost 8 years ago. We were working on a 6-gen Camaro. This is for a CTSV 3, like a 2016 plus, but same concept in a Camaro. And there's just nowhere on that engine bay to put an ice tank. And I started looking up in the fender, and I was like, man, there's some space in here, but shit is tight. And we were cutting everything on a bandsaw. We didn't have a plasma cutter or a water jet or anything. We were cutting everything on a damn bandsaw. So I made a handful of those fender tanks back then, and they worked really well. It sits up in the fender, and it's contoured.
Just like,
To that
how do you
fender.
think, how are you like, you know what? I'm going to make this very oddly shaped thing.
Yeah. And the
And people are
V3
gonna
one's
do-
the hardest one. And we made a handful of them, and they really took off. And I've been making them ever since.
Oh yeah, every customer, they're like, what's first set of mods? Spark plugs, E85, fender tank.
Fender tank, yeah. And on a 6th gen, it has a 1.5-inch filler cap that you can access from the engine bay.
Yep.
And we send you like a little angled funnel to get in there. So not only does it add volume to your cooling system, it makes it easy to fill your cooling
They
system.
must all be losing that angled funnel though,
Probably.
because I was out there trying to fill it with a freaking hose up in there.
You can still use, we made one of the really cool, like original designs I came up with was that little filler tool to fill the
Oh,
LT4
yeah.
system.
Do you have those?
Yeah, I'll grab one.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's gonna try to take it home.
I'm gonna need one.
He's gonna need one.
I'm for real. I'm definitely gonna need to buy that before we leave.
Yeah, you can take it home.
This was a lifesaver.
So the LT4 stuff, you can see it has like a little,
Look in the middle.
the middle.
Oh yeah.
No,
It's
flip
like a
it.
Schrader valve that you have to push in order to get coolant in there.
While putting the coolant in, while having some kind of pressure.
Yeah, so we made
Goddamn GM.
that tool to where, and I had to do like some funny Google research to figure out how to make
I
those
think it's gonna pick it up.
because
It will.
the threads are
put it
for
in
like a
the
Dr.
tip.
Pepper water bottle
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. You could thread a bottle onto it,
to make a funnel.
and then it's got
basically.
the O-ring in there.
So instead of trying to manufacture a big funnel, I was like, well,
That's badass.
can we make a cheap way to fill these cooling systems? So you push that on, it pushes that Schrader valve down, and then you can screw like a Dr. Pepper or Smart Water, whatever, with the bottom cut off and fill it with coolant. And it gives it a place to burp air out and stuff.
There's tons of times, like just recently, last night, I was remote tuning a guy's car, and I'm looking at his intake temps, and I'm like, oh, they're over 200. You have air in the system. The pump turns off, right?
Yeah.
The pump turns off once it senses the air. And to tell them how to bleed that, it's really hard if you don't have this.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you push the little Schrader and you turn the key on and the pump comes on, it sprays water everywhere.
Yeah, you could get a funnel and a stick maybe and start pushing that button.
He had a hose
what we
and a
did.
long stick and a water bottle, and he
Yeah.
kind of like made it all work. But
Yeah, this is
with this, it's just,
And this
it
is
already
for-
depresses it and everything.
this is for like ZL1 Camaros or Cadillac V3s. Those are the two that primarily have it. This will also fit, or we have another one that fits the C7 Z06 and the Camaro ZL1, the 5th gen. So we have one that fits those two, and then this one fits the 6th gen and the
Because that one's got like a twist lock cap. There's no straight.
Yeah, it's just a hole.
That goes on what again?
3rd generation CTSV, like 2016 and newer.
No.
There's on the supercharger coolant manifold. Yeah. There's a port that for filling. So there's like a little rubber cap you pull off. This goes on, and it pushes that Schrader valve down to allow access to filling or burping.
Wow,
But if you can imagine, like I went to Orlando to go tune a V3, and I'm like, man, this thing's getting really hot. So we had to pull over at a gas station. You know how hard it was to find a funnel, and I had to find a stick off the ground, and it was really hard to get it to work. We got it to work, but had I kept that in my bag, I could have just been
you could
done.
The reason I made them like that so you could throw it in your glove box, and if you do have that problem, because like most people that work on their own cars, they pull a supercharger off, put it back on, and they don't realize how much coolant they've lost, or they don't try to fill it properly.
And I see it all the time when I go to tune them.
Does it have a cap on it?
No, so you like literally go in the gas station and buy like a Dr. Pepper and cut the bottom of the bottle off and screw it into these threads. These threads are very specific to the bottle manufacturing industry. There's probably 2 or 3 different kinds. Like obviously a big Gatorade's not going to fit there, but most Mountain Dews and root beers and all that, it's all the same thread.
He doesn't
pitch.
want to say Coke placement, you know.
Yeah, product placement. Not a sponsor. But I 3D printed these for years. I mean, the 3D printer is just going ham up there trying to keep up with the orders. Now they're aluminum. They're anodized. You're not going to crush them or break them because you could break
Because now you can keep it in the bag.
Yeah, you just throw it.
I had the 3D printed ones, but I broke them.
I'll send you with a pair of these.
Yeah.
But yeah, we sell the shit out of those.
Really?
Yeah, big help for anybody that has these cars because for some reason they almost always have air in them.
But that's a real just innovative thing. I just came up with that one day. I was like, I'm going to 3D print this. This is the early days of me learning CAD. And I probably had to 3D print like 20 of them before it even worked. And a couple of them, you screw it together, it'd break. You know, you have to learn how to do it.
How hard was it to figure out the 3D printing stuff? Because I've tried that. It's kind of rough.
I was trying to figure it out at the same time I was trying to learn CAD, so it's probably a little rough. Now I have a bamboo printer, which is like way easy. You put the file in there, it just comes out perfect. Like
Really?
I don't have to tweak it or
Different materials or?
Different printer, right?
it's just the way they design their printer to be more. It like kind of figures its own errors out.
Like communicating.
Yeah, it's good. It's good at figuring out if there's a layer error or something, so you don't have so many failed prints.
Oh, I didn't have that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I had the reality.
I did too. But it took some learning, but I mean, that's what we're here for, is to learn. So I spent many late nights. The first 2 or 3 years in this location, because I think we moved here in 2018, I worked till midnight every night. There was never a night that I didn't for a long time. And now, man, I take time off. We're only open 4 days a week now.
Now you can do a podcast.
Yeah, I can do a podcast on a Friday. Yeah.
Any other helpful inventions you got?
The cap for the KRX.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about some side-by-side stuff too. So like,
Guys, we're gonna talk about the manufacturing. Then we're gonna kick it off back into starting 2016 to now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just the last few years we started to get into the side-by-side market. One of my big hobbies is off-roading. It's a really cool way to get away from the shop and really just decompress.
Have you been to Crosby?
Crosby, I haven't. No.
Oh, okay.
Is that down by you?
Yeah.
Is that a mud park or?
It's a extreme off-road.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I did the mud in the beginning, but I like rock crawling.
Oh, okay.
I'm all about being hard on your shit in the rocks, you know. So or hill killing, like climbing a hill that nobody wants to climb. That's gonna be me.
Are you the ones that go like
Oh yeah.
Vertically?
I'll have 2 wheels. It'd be on the 2 rear wheels or.
Damn, that just
It's fun. We do it a lot. But the KRX had this front diff issue where when you would lock it in 4-wheel drive and you go over a rock or something, your wheel would come down, it would shatter the gear that engages the 4-wheel drive because it was made out of powder and metal, like a connecting rod, and it would just shear it. And then all these parts would explode and break your diff case. Wow. And you can't just buy the parts of the diff case. You have to buy a whole new diff. So I actually another thing working at T1, I became friends with Frank Riak of DSS, Dry Shaft Shop. And over the years, he was always really helpful. And I contacted him. I said, hey, Frank, I want to make a part 300M, and I don't know the first person to go to. Would you be willing to make it? He's like, well, I'm not willing to make it, but I'll put you in contact with the guy that can. So he did, and we developed our own diff gear that's made out of 300M material, special heat treating. I don't know all the specifics on it, but it's very strong.
Yeah.
And that kind of got us into the side-by-side industry a little bit. And I was more or less just doing it because I enjoyed it. But now we have, 15 or 20 products for the KRX. And then we have the one product for the Pro R, because I really just wanted that for myself. but now we sell it a lot. So the other thing...
The 300M, they use that in the axles?
Yeah, so it's a type of material that has a special heat treating that gives it some malleability or the ability to twist without just shattering.
Yeah.
Because if something's too hard, yeah, it's strong as shit. But for an end mill for a CNC machine is going to be incredibly hard. But you get in a certain twisting situation, it shatters like glass. Yeah. So this thing is able to take some shock load without shattering. In fact, one guy broke one recently, and all he did was break all the dogs off of it, which is the first time I'd seen that. But he sent me a video, and he was being extremely hard on it on purpose. Usually there are other things that break before this now.
Yeah.
And the same with the center caps on the factory wheels. My first ride in my Kawasaki was bone stock. The center caps are plastic and they fall off. I'll never forget why. Like the first time I noticed it, I was like, that's a Polaris center cap on the ground. And I was like, shit's just falling apart, right? Just being funny or whatever. And I get back to camp and it was actually mine. It was mine that had fallen off.
Oh my God.
So I developed these that have a nice snap ring on the backside so it can never fall off. You can hit these on rocks and they're not going anywhere.
That's the like a dust cover?
Yeah, it's the center cap dust cover.
Yeah.
Same like we make them for weld wheels for any weld wheel for most of the GM cars. We make a billet version.
Because weld still makes the ugly center caps.
Yeah, they're like stamped aluminum or whatever. And then we do have a fiber laser, so we do custom engraving even.
Nice.
And we can put Justin's face on a center cap. That's what y'all want.
Can you put Go Hard on it?
Dude, yeah, we can, for sure.
I was going to ask you, I hope, and please tell me you're not putting in the description of these materials, aircraft metals or aviation metals.
No.
Okay, I just got to say.
No.
That's bullshit when they do that.
No, I mean, if you want to fly it, you can, but I don't recommend
Because
it.
a lot of people like aviation grade or like aircraft grade metal.
We just say most of them are like 60, 61. And
Yeah.
Anodized, most of them. We obviously talk about 300M, but we don't tell you the exact heat treat specification because even I don't know it.
Yeah.
But no, we don't talk about airplanes. Probably end up in the
Are you talking
wrong.
about when they're like, aircraft grade aluminum or something like that?
That doesn't exist.
Yeah, we, for the most part, try and keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep the confusion down.
Tell us about your trophies. You got about 6 of them back there. Most of them say Texas 2K, Streetcar Takeover. Tell us when you won those.
So when I did start dedicated, I did own a Nissan GTR, and it was mostly just used for development for our mile car. So I would test traction control strategies or boost control strategies. It was just kind of a test car, and I just really liked the GTR, especially after working on them for so many years. And one year, my girlfriend was like, hey, I want to race at Texas 2K. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, I really want to race. I'm like, all right, we'll put you in my GTR, which is stock turbos, so we can run the Class 1, GTR Class 1. And we put like a Kirky seat in it and like some decent tires on some stock wheels. And she went out and she won that class. She was like a hair trigger on the tree and understood how to launch a GTR, which is kind of hard on its own. And she won one of them trophies back there, like no problem.
Nice. 2016.
Yeah, 2016. So like right when I started. And that kind of segued into buying the V2 because she really wanted to race. I mean, she was all about it. And as you know, Justin, it's pretty cool when your girl's involved.
As soon as they're in, you're like, you get a new car. You go ahead.
And you're like, man, I don't have to race it. I just get to watch the data and try and push this car harder, And she's the pilot.
And a slider.
And they don't think about it. All they think about is I'm going that way.
Yeah, and sometimes the women are fierce.
And I'm in the car and I'm like, oh my God, what's this? What's this? What's this? With Wendy, I'm just like, I need you to make it down there.
Yeah.
And they're killers on the tree.
Killers on the tree, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, and we got the V2 and started developing things like the trunk tank and components for the cooling system, and we wanted to do our own cam. So I got with Pat G to actually spec a cam for us, and we were at the track testing it. We still don't have a cam name yet, and there's always people hanging around the track, sitting there betting and stuff like that, and you hear people talking. And I'll never forget. I'm real close to a few of these guys, and they're like, "Oh man, that's a girl. She had blonde hair hanging out of the helmet, and she takes off, and that car was fast. It's like 940s or 920s at that time." And he just goes, "She gone." So we named that cam She Gone. And it's been kind of a staple in the CTSV community. Mm-hmm. It's really a go-to cam for most CTSVs. It chops hard, it drives good, and it's fast. Like, it's got a lot of top end. So it's really stuck pretty well. And there's a trophy up there too from, let's see, 2K19. She ran the heavyweight class and got runner-up. I actually can't remember who beat her that year, but it was a close race. I can't remember who it was, but we did the heavyweight class quite a few times with just like an LSA blower, nothing too crazy. And then moving forwards, we started working on more of the LT stuff, and that's where we developed another cam. We had this customer, a good friend of mine, a Texas 2K OG. He was probably going from like 2001 or 2. He's kind of one of the original guys.
Wow.
And he owns Elite Motorsports in Austin, where they sell a lot of high-end cars. And he brought me his Cadillac CTSV, as a 2016 CTSV. And again, I wanted to develop my own cam, but this time we were so close to Texas Speed, I just worked with them, and we cut a handful of cams and actually tested them on his car. So we named the cam after him. His name is Sarenthia Wershura, and we called the cam the SW Special. And we've been running that cam in almost every LT car we build, even NA stuff, for I think about 8 years now. It's been a pretty good cam for us. We really only have one LT cam that we run, and it's the SW Special. Same cam I ran in my vet when I set the world record, so it obviously works. And then we've got another trophy from the C7Z06. It turns out it was 2020 when I set that record, and we got runner-up. Remember, I red lit. So let's see, I think we put the GTR in an index class in 2018, and it got runner-up. Yeah, I got runner-up in the index class.
What's
the one with the looks like a tree?
Yeah, is that the one you red lit?
No,
Oh.
The tree one, to be honest with you, I don't remember that exact one. I think it was one of the first races we won, though, or at least got runner-up or something. I don't think it says.
That's a pretty cool little trophy.
That is a cool trophy, especially like if you red lit, you're like, here goes a trophy for red lit.
It's got some stuff on it I can't read. I just really don't remember, to be honest with you.
That's pretty cool.
But we did a lot of streetcar takeovers too, and we'd win like the streetcar classes and stuff quite often. I've got a handful of trophies from the Lexus. In fact, a really fun memory. We're at probably Texas 2K. Man, it had to be one of the later ones, like probably 17 or 16, because I still had the Lexus at the time. Which I still have it, but I was still racing it.
Right.
And we were at Texas 2K, and everybody was like, "Man, there's a no prep going on that Pro Speed had put on at what's the other track? Lone Star."
No, HMP.
HMP. Yeah, okay, it's HMP.
The 8th of Mile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they put on some race out there, and all my crew was like, "Dude, we gotta go. I'm like, "Man, just one race at a time for me. Like, it's so much work. I'm fucking sweating. Sorry for cussing. I'm sweating over here, in the suit. I don't want to go race anywhere else." I think Biddle was pushing me too. It's like, dude, let's go. He was going to run his Mustang. And so we ended up going. We loaded everything up at the track, 2K, went out to H&P, and we're in basically a no prep race again. You got all your normal no preppers out there. Derek Kelly and Suitcase and all these guys. I kind of forget all the cars, but I'm in there with my Lexus. And man, I'm just treeing guys. And I guess I've been working on the tune. It's working so good. I'm launching like 15 PSI, which is kind of unheard of. Like, it's just taking it. And I get all the way into the finals, and I barely beat the guy by treeing him. And he came around me so hard at the end, I really thought I lost.
Damn.
And all my crew's walking back, and their heads are kind of hung low. And I'm like, dude, what happened? Did I win? They're like, dude, you won. I was like, holy shit. I won like $8,500, you know, against all these much faster cars for sure. And that definitely was a good, fond memory of the Lexus.
Did you have to change the tune-up to go?
You know, I really didn't. It
I
was just
because you were set for 2K, which is
sticky.
on kill.
Yeah, it was just working.
But H&P is a extremely sticky track too, though.
It was working really well. I just didn't have the same amount of power as the other guy, but we had raced before, and I don't know, it's a long story, but kind of had some drama. And he tried to burn me down, but we make these ice tanks that have a trans cooler in them. So I knew I had 2 bags of ice sitting on top of my trans. I didn't care. I just let it sit on the gate and sit on the trans brake. And I just happened to tree him because I was waiting so long for him to play his game. And I was way out, and he had to reel me in. But yeah, it was a fun time.
Damn, sounds like a real
Just didn't have enough.
grudge racer, man.
Yeah. I enjoyed the art of driving is just as enjoyable to me as tuning, but it is nice to see somebody else drive sometimes, like my ex-girlfriend, you know.
Way better.
Yeah.
Way better.
Or customers, you know, getting to the track with a customer, and all you have to worry about is the data.
People ask me all the time, they're like, why don't you want to go out there and race? I'm like, well, first off, she's faster. You know, she's lighter.
Yeah.
She's quicker on the tree. I can admit that.
Yeah.
It's also a lot more satisfying when she goes out and beats everybody as they're sitting there talking shit,
Yeah.
and she's out there gapping them. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and most tuners are like that. We want to see the customers go fast. A lot of people think, oh, you don't want the customer to be faster than you. No. Not at all. I want every customer to be faster than me. That's the point. That's why we do this.
Yeah, that's a big reason I've taken a lot of time off for racing is because, like, when you're running a shop and racing and you're racing your own car, you really kind of start to get a little burned out.
Yeah. And
So-
you do all the tuning here
Yeah,
for
ounce of
everything,
tuning, yeah.
and you spend the time with them, street drive them, everything.
Yeah,
So-
it's funny you get asked a lot. You doing a street tuner or dyno? I'm like, well, technically both, because I have a hit spot. I'm gonna go make a hit every time. So every single car comes off the dyno, goes on a hit spot. It gets driven too, just like cruising and stop and go. Kind of, you know, I have a routine around here.
Making sure that it's perfected.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've seen some tire marks around here.
yeah, it might be me.
Yeah.
Usually the police in the area, they get to know you, and they know you're not going to go out there and make hits next to other cars.
Yeah, I have a spot that's kind of like, it's an on ramp
In Mexico.
Yeah,
Right.
it's an on ramp in Mexico.
So tell us the process here. I guess do they DM you and hey, I want my car built, or
Usually, I think most people are going to start with a phone call. Sometimes I get the email, which is perfect. Emails are so much easier to handle. Sometimes it's a Facebook message, but ultimately, we start out with just trying to figure out their goals. Next, I'm going to try to figure out their budget, because there's a big gap between their goals and their budget sometimes. And then we try and mold it to where their next upgrades are not going to have to backtrack. So I'll be like, dude, only spend $5,000 now instead of $7,000, because you're going to backtrack if you do this now. Or, hey, you might want to spend a little more so we don't have to backtrack later. We're trying to make it to where they could just go in stages, get to the next level. But we're pretty simple. Like, we just want to put the parts on the car that are going to work, because ultimately we're selling results. We're not selling parts. We're not selling, we might be selling dyno numbers, but ultimately we're trying to get him to beat his friend or
Right.
whoever. So I try to model the builds to where it's going to reach their goals. They're going to be happy, because, you know, if you're spending money and you're not happy, it ain't worth it. But that's one reason we make a lot of our own parts too. We don't have to worry about timelines. We don't have to worry about, is that part going to work the way it's supposed to? If we make it, it's going to work. I mean, it's one of the reasons we made our own catch cans.
Yeah, and the catch cans, they're modeled a little different than the conventional catch can.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a, I don't want to say a race catch can, but it's definitely using a lot of my experience building the higher horsepower cars because, as you know, they tend to spit a lot more oil out.
It's the catch can that you should have if you're trying to do performance.
Yeah, and we know that's your standard vented catch can like this one. You know, you're going to smell it potentially. So as the vapors come out through the filter, you're going to potentially smell it. So that's why we made the catch can that you can recirculate back into your like air box. A lot of times I'll take one of these and I'll put a fitting in an air box. So you route a hose over to your air box. And now you don't smell it anymore. So, but you're still getting the proper ventilation. You're not recirculating any of this oil back into your engine because pretty much any can, if it's got a vacuum source, it's going to get in there somehow at some point.
Yeah, check valve or not, it'll make its way.
It'll make its way, especially if you fill it up. It's definitely going to get in there. So that's why we make it that way. There's a lot of thought that goes into these catch cans that if you look at our website, you see it. I don't hide anything. I have cutaway views of how the catch can works.
Nice.
And there's definitely a lot of options here. Like this is a tall one. The Dash 12, we've got a dual Dash 10 with a short body. There's a lot of options here.
You could do the dual with
the tall body
too.
Yeah. You just can't do a dual Dash 12. It has to be like dual Dash 10 because of the height. Well, yeah, I think the fittings will hit each other is what happens. And then we got just a simple billet mounting ring. It goes around it. Allows you to spin it around, raise it up or down, mount it how you want it. And there's also some threaded holes on the top. You can technically make a bracket off of that.
What makes them different than the other ones, than the competitor?
Mostly it's the weight. A lot of catch cans are just going to have two fittings, at the top or on the side, and they're going to just shoot the oil vapor into the can, and it's going to have to try and figure out its direction from there. But this one, we actually try to make it take a circular path as it enters, and in doing so, all the oil molecules are going to start sticking to the walls. Because the goal here with the catch can is to not only give it a place to catch the oil, but it's to take the oil out of the air.
Separate it.
Yeah, we need the air to get out from the engine so we don't blow our seals, but we need the oil to come out of that so it doesn't follow the air. So as the oil and the air enter this and start centrifugally sticking to the walls and then draining into the can, it also has a bit of a difficult path of getting out, so the oil will stick to a lot of things on its way out. So the concept with this was actually kind of hard originally because I wanted to make it a screw together style like most cans are, but because we need these to, I'm going to set this one down. As we need these to line up, I had to do a bolt together style. So it actually took me about a year of just brainstorming this concept and 3D printing models and testing them. Like I did hoses filled with oil and shooting high pressure air into them and seeing if anything comes out, and then where it went inside the can. You start with a fresh, clean can and see where that oil went. Just a lot of development. It was probably in total a 3-year process to make these.
What about the drain?
So it's just got a 1/4-inch MPT at the bottom, and like the kits that we make that are vehicle specific, we'll run a hose, down to the bottom of the car so you can easily drain it into a cup or a pan. Which most of the time you don't need to drain these on street cars every oil change or something. But this one has an ORB on top, like a Dash 10, so you could run a different style fitting straight up. Or there's just a lot of options when it comes to these cans.
Why do they smoke?
Well, it's this oil vapor escaping, very fine oil vapor. So as your car gets hot, that oil starts to atomize effectively in the crankcase. And then as you make power, it's going to push that air with the atomized oil out of the engine. No matter how many of those turns it makes, that vapor is so fine, it just doesn't make its way out of the air. But a very fine smoke is not really a big deal. You can smell it and it stinks a little bit. That's why we have the recirced cans, so you can route them to a place where you don't smell it.
Nice.
I've been doing a bunch of them where we route them back into the airbox, and your engine sucks in that very light vapor, just smell. It doesn't actually suck in any oil. So that's the concept behind that.
So you do a lot of R&D stuff as well.
Yeah.
Which I like watching.
There's always a lot going on, and we don't show it.
Some of the stuff you have shown, like the pump tests that nobody really shows. Don't you have that posted somewhere?
It's on a blog on our website. Yeah, I think if you scroll to the very bottom, our homepage is right there.
Okay, but what made you do that? Because I thought that was extremely educational and helped a lot. 'Cause a lot of people don't realize, what those pumps are actually going through.
Well, we were doing a lot of cooling systems, and you start getting people on the forums. You know how it is, like he says, she said, and this, that, and the other. I was like, well, I kind of want to know for myself, because when I speak, I always try and speak just from firsthand experience. If I do that, then I can be confident with it. So I bought just a little pump flow test, a flow gauge or whatever, and I set up a real simple little basket of, or like a storage container that I could fill with water, and then run all these different pumps through that flow meter, and then visually too, you can tell which ones flow more. So I'm about to do another test, and I'm going to try and do more like video of that test to physically show you how far one of these pumps will shoot water, basically.
What about like head pressure?
Well, that was one of the things we tested in the last test. So actually on this cart, I had either an LSA or an LT4 supercharger on the stand, and we ran 50 feet of hose between the pump, a heat exchanger, a supercharger, and the tank, so we could simulate the whole system.
But that's something I think a lot of people don't realize when they put like a bilge pump. A bilge pump's not made for head pressure.
Right.
Right? So, because it's not a sealed impeller.
Right, exactly,
So,
yeah. The
a lot of
moment
people
head
don't
pressure
realize
hits
that.
it, the flow rate drops. It plummets.
Drastically.
Yes.
That was
So-
something cool when he showed that test. You could tell that some of these sealed rotor pumps were significantly outperforming the bilge
Right.
pump stuff.
So that the test that I showed was a test where I used a ball valve to actually add head pressure.
Okay.
The test that I did for my own personal knowledge was using the supercharger with the bricks in it and a full system. So the ball valve, what it was able to allow me to do was I was able to measure the pressure and then graph it based on head pressure and flow rate. Yeah. So that was the cool thing. We saw that some pumps would just die. You put 5 psi head pressure on them, that sucker's done.
Really?
Yeah. The other ones,
A lot of people don't realize that little bit of head pressure though is natural.
natural, yeah. Your heat
You're gonna have
exchanger,
it.
your intercooler, your fittings, your hose, the type of fittings you're using, it's all restrictive in one way, and it's accumulative over time. As it passes through the system, it gets worse and worse the more resistance it hits.
Right. Damn.
And you can measure it in the pump based on voltage. So during the test, I was monitoring voltage too. So you're able to read as head pressure goes up, so did the voltage. The amp draw of the amp draw of the pump would increase.
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But those kind of tests just show how much you're willing to put into making sure that what you're selling is top notch.
Right.
Yeah, we want the knowledge for sure. And a lot of times we have all these pumps here. It's just a matter of setting up a little test bench and doing it.
Yeah, people don't realize how long that takes.
I was about to say it's time. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that LSA blower test, and man, that took every bit of an entire day, as well as a little bit more into the next day, just to do that and to make sure everything stayed consistent. But I'm sure you spent a day of your time
testing,
doing that just to help the customer out.
Yeah, because we want to be able to use the right stuff,
Yeah.
That's why we started using a lot of those Pierberg pumps. We realized they did so well with pressure.
Yeah, I never even heard of them until I saw that test, and I was like, oh, really cool.
Yeah, and like we tested the 400, and originally I was like, man, screw this 400. It pulls 40 something amps, and it actually moves a lot of water, but it's kind of hard to get put in a system. But then it seemed like everybody just wanted that pump, so I've started to utilize the 400 in some of our pump, some of our
40
tanks.
amps is a hell of a draw on a pump.
Yeah, when you got a 120 amp alternator.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was something I noticed with Wendy's car. We had to get Meckman to make an alternator because I built that car for something we can get in and drive across country and race.
Yeah.
So there's so many fans and coolers and
3 fuel pumps probably.
the hop switch acted up, so I jumped it. but you would know come down to idle and it would start dropping. So when you're selecting your pump, now if you show them the amperage, they can at least understand that you're adding this and this and this. This is going to affect that alternator as well.
That's why with the Pierberg CWA 150, which is a pump that can kind of go in the OEM location on a lot of cars, pretty much all the cars we're talking about. That's why we make those harnesses. Those harnesses plug into the factory coolant pump plug, and it'll trigger a relay, which is a higher amp relay with higher amp wiring, and you can now run a CWA 150 in like a C7 Vet, a C6 Camaro, a V3, a V2.
Damn.
And you make the harnesses here for that too,
For
right?
all four of those, yeah.
Right.
And then we make some that are universal too for like a Chevy SS or these universal tank applications with the Davies Craig 150. It's a real universal, easy pump to use.
Do you think that the faster flow is more beneficial?
Well, it has to be, because you're talking about you're pumping heat into an intercooler at a very high rate. The only way to combat that is to put the cooling mechanism at a very high rate. So as that intercooler is getting pounded with heat, you got to equally combat it with a fast source of heat reduction.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been kind of back and forth on that because
Yeah.
I've had really good luck with the stock pumps.
Right.
But I didn't know if it's kind of like a radiator, right? A lot of people just drop like a 160 thermostat, but if you're in a real hot climate, it just stays open. So then when you get into traffic, you start, I know
starts
that's what
heating up.
we noticed in Puerto Rico, they'll start overheating.
Yeah.
So we'll have to go back to like a 170 or 180 or something like that and drill a couple holes in them. And then they'll sit at like 195. And in traffic, they might go to 210.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think airflow has a little bit to do with that too on the fans sort of thing. But from when it comes to the intercooler system, it seems like flow outdoes it.
Yeah,
Keeping
I
it
think
in there
I was
doesn't help.
referencing the radiator with that, and
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
it always had me. I wasn't sure because I know you got to keep the water in the radiator for it to actually work, so the thermostat has to shut. But I guess without thermostat, it makes sense. You're just
Yeah.
trying to pull that load, that heat load out.
Yeah, because you're trying, it's think about it as a rapidly increasing component, and the faster you feed the coolant into it, the quicker it'll keep it from rising.
But what about the heat exchanger then?
Well, the heat exchanger naturally is larger, and it disperses that
So
coolant
much
flow
more.
over a larger area.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's maybe even hard to explain when you really understand it well, but it just seems to. Well, here's one way to
Well,
look
you
at it too.
tested it, so that's why I asked.
Here's another way to look at it too. The factory temp sensors do not show the rate of rise and climb and fall as quickly as it's actually happening. So the IET sensor in an LSA is fairly slow to respond to changes. You see it in the log; it's real slow and then goes back down. Whereas you put a glass bead, fast acting sensor in there, you'll see the rise and fall before the factory ones even finish going up.
I have to test that now.
Yeah, I have glass beads on the ones I test.
Yeah.
And I'll use like a Motec C127 dash to log those additional sensors. Because Motec dash is log data too, which is cool.
I wish Motec wasn't so expensive.
I know. That's why I bought a dash. It's easy to monitor and watch it. You don't have to have your laptop.
What's your most sold packages? Because I know you offer like stage 1 through 5.
It seems like for us, the second generation CTSV components are what we sell the most of. So we have a full cooling system that has a tank, a pump, all the lines, a heat exchanger. So when it comes to components, the V2 guys, I guess there's more DIYers out there. But for our actual build packages, it's going to be C7 Corvettes and V3s. And they most of the time go straight to the heads cam package, which would be the stage 3 or 4. They want to do, heads cam, headers, E85, and then a lot of them will add on like a ported blower and throttle body to pretty much go straight from, where they make 525 from the factory and we're putting 820 down when they're leaving. So they got to learn how to drive again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that's probably the most common. We do tons of heads and cam packages, mostly because we have the cams here, we have the ported heads here. If you were to drop a V3 off for a stage 4 package on a Monday, you could possibly have it on a Thursday.
Damn, really?
Yeah, we can get it done that fast.
Yeah, having all that stuff in stock is rare. Most people don't have the heads or any of that in
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah,
And
having
that's- what heads is that?
Frankenstein engineering, so we use for our heads.
And
And the cams
Texas
are
Speed?
cut by Texas Speed.
Okay.
It's a custom spec cam done by them.
I think one of the best packages y'all started doing was the pulley and belt.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we always fight the belt and all that. So,
Yeah, so
that's what drew me. And I'm like, oh, you need pulleys? Just go to dedicated because you can just pick it from a list.
Yeah,
and they
this-
send you everything.
This engine, the whole reason we have it is so that we can test all the belt sizes. Because that's the biggest thing. I changed my upper and I changed my lower. I have no idea what size belt I need. Some of these belts are $60 each. You don't want to sit there and buy 3 of them to figure it out. So we did the hard work for you and tested all the combinations. And then you can buy it from us. You can buy the package that comes with an upper pulley, a lower, the idlers, even the tensioner bracket that we make, which is the one we talked about, which
right.
they did, structure analysis on to make sure that we're pulling, keeping it rigid so it doesn't. That's actually one reason belts come off, is because either this pulley here, this bolt is yielding, or the actual material of the bracket holding the tensioner is yielding. So by upgrading those two things, we can keep our belts from getting shredded.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when a belt shreds and there's like 3 ribs left or something, it's usually because that bolt moves.
Yeah, I learned that on the Pro Charger days.
Yeah,
When
exactly.
the big Pro Charger brackets would bend and it'd cut the belt off.
Yeah.
Be like, well, there is 2 ribs.
Yeah, the Kong 2650 really changed the industry when we were like, hell yeah, we're just pulley this thing up on an 8 rib, and then next thing you know, you're breaking bolts and breaking belts.
Breaking balancers off. I've
Breaking
seen that.
balancers,
That was a
yeah.
big thing.
Better pin your balancer.
I was like, thank God we went turbo first.
Yeah, the turbo stuff, you definitely got there first, and I was like, you know what? I'm a turbo guy. Why don't I have a turbo kit?
That was actually an accident. We bought the car and it had a turbo kit and everything. When we bought it as a shell, and we weren't going to go to 2K that year. It was 20. I don't even know 18.
It was
19.
a coupe shell, wasn't it?
No, because
wasn't?
it was sedan.
Oh, okay.
It was Wendy's actual car now.
Oh, okay.
And it was just sitting, and we weren't going to go to 2K. I had a track rental for a customer in Florida, and he was into monster trucks. It's one of my favorite customers, but he was into monster trucks for some crazy reason because he just had money for no reason, and he passed away in a monster truck crash.
Oh, wow.
So it was 4 days before 2K, and I'm like, we're not going to go to that. So I was like, well, I haven't turboed a V2 before, but I have a stock motor, stock trans, and everything here, turbo kit. So we just slapped that car together in 3 days and tuned it on the way to Texas, drove it there, and it did really good.
Yeah.
The stock motor and trans lasted for 10 months, making 1280-ish, around 1280.
Yeah, you're
and
not so
then I
concerned with
cranked the boost
water.
up a little further and broke a rod. At about 32 pounds, it broke a rod.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the turbo stuff is kind of nice. You're like, oh, the air density sucks. Let me just turn it up a couple pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. The turbos don't care as long as they're big enough
Yeah.
I blame Manuel. He was out there that night. He was pressuring me.
to turn it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, whatever. Stock motor. We were racing a 427 built motor car, and we'd already beat it from a 40 roll. And then we were trying to do a 60, and it just didn't have enough with the
What
stock
car was
motor.
that?
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember
and then we
that.
blew it up.
Yeah.
What car was that?
Wendy's car. Her
No,
car.
no, no.
now.
Which car were you racing?
I don't remember the guy's name. It was a white one. A white coupe.
I remember the video.
Yep.
Yep.
So he was talking shit, and we were like, we'll come down there. So we drove from New Orleans over there
Damn.
and went and raced them. Yep.
Yeah, we plan to do more turbo stuff for sure. And we have turboed a 6th gen Camaro, actually. It was a nightmare. Like, there's just not enough space underneath it to do the same style kit we did for the
When are you
V2.
turbo on the C7s?
Man, we have a customer that really wants to do it. And again, it's a kind of a nightmare of packaging. To put the turbos where we want it, I just don't know how possible it is.
I mean, I've seen one, a couple of them.
Yeah.
And I know On 3's making a kit, and then Performance Supercar, they just made one. So
Yeah. I have a guy that wants
time
to
to
do
do
it. We may investigate it. It's probably going to require some late nights for me, but we could definitely do it. We have all the stuff here.
it'll be worth it. I mean, when y'all did the CTSV, I remember asking if you were going to do some, and you weren't going to do them at the time. So we made up a kit, but and then you guys ended up making one, which is good because I sent many customers for it. But that's actually the manifold for it there.
Yeah,
And
that's
nice thick pipe, welded, real clean, and so
Yeah, driver's side manifold right there. Schedule 10, because it is holding the turbos, and the thicker stuff holds heat in too, which helps increase
Spool.
the energy going to the turbo. Yeah, so
I figure you do something similar with C7s.
yeah, it's just the packaging is a little harder, but we have all the stuff here to do it. We already have the custom, low mount drains and everything that we make for them, which a lot of people buy for their turbo kits too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just
I
a
just
matter
figured out
of
to apply a little pressure.
a little pressure. Yeah, it's good. I have a customer applying pressure
I'm
too.
struggling to not turbo mine, but we might.
When we first did the turbo kit, we were here and a customer just showed up with his car, dropped off, and was like, I want you to build a turbo kit for me. I don't care how long it takes. And I was still a little bit adamant, I really was like, dude, I don't have time. I'm too busy. But we stuck it out. I worked late nights and weekends and we did it. And I'm glad we did because
It came out really good.
Yeah.
And it's a nice kit. And I said, I've had a lot of customers put them on in their driveways and no issues.
yeah, even when I did my coupe and went 840s on the stock trans, it was the same kit. We didn't change anything. Mm-hmm. I tried to use a thicker intercooler, but it actually didn't do any better. So the thin intercooler is really the way to go.
Yeah.
I can see people buying them.
Yeah, it's a big difference when you go from a blower car where you're kind of struggling. You might run a 950 on a cool day and run a 10-1 on a hot day. Well, turbo car, you're pretty much going to run the same thing every time.
Yeah, when we did a trip with her supercharged car before the wreck happened, and we took it all the way to California. And on the way there, we stopped in Albuquerque. And I guess they have a place on top of a mountain that you race. And I remember racing, I think guy Steven Tapia or something. Man, I remember the whole race. We're looking at each other, and I was like, this is the slowest thing I've ever. And this was like a mid 9-second car at the time. Yeah. I'm like, I feel like we're not going anywhere. Yeah. So the blower stuff is just so heavily affected by the DA. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But when we did a little tour with the turbo car, it was like, oh, DA +5.
Yeah.
No
back
problem.
pressure goes up a little, but you're still going fast.
Plus, it seems a lot easier on the motors.
Yeah, it is.
She's just got a rod and piston motor, and it puts down 1,400 wheel, no problem. And stock block, stock heads. Where you do that with a blower, and it's catastrophic.
Less heat, too. Yeah, I'm a big fan of turbos.
Can't tell by looking around
know,
here.
right?
And there's literally turbos everywhere here.
There's definitely more turbos here than usual. Those are the Audi turbos over there. 9569s.
Are y'all going to start dipping into that market?
Yeah, so I bought an R8 so that we can kind of test the market out, see if we...
Gen 2?
It's 2017. It's the V10 with the DCT. So they have 7-speed DCTs. I'm a huge fan of the V10 in general because I raced them for years in the GTRs. And then, talking to Tony, who has now got a lot of products made for him, it was kind of a no-brainer. I could buy a lot of stuff from him, get support from him, and we could build a few of these a year for some of our clientele that already have them. I think we have 3 or 4 customers that already have R8s. One of them's turbo already, so it's kind of just a no-brainer. But I had to buy one for myself so we can learn what we need to know about them. So we're actually not even building the turbo kit on this one. Rampage Fab's doing the turbo kit, and then I bought all the fuel system, Motec, and some like wiring harnesses and stuff from T1. So it is kind of a unique scenario where we're not building this car, we're just assembling it effectively.
Right.
But it's a good way to get our feet wet and understand the platform before we really kind of offer it to other people.
Instead of having to be the guinea pigs.
Yeah, we don't want
that's
them.
exponentially expensive.
Yeah. We had the twin turbo car come in here a little while ago to get some stuff fixed from whoever built it previously, but that alone let us know what was right and wrong or what needed to be done properly. So we're excited about that. We're still, a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to get away from these GM cars or whatever. We're totally not. We've actually, if anything, started creating more new products recently than we have in the last 2 or 3 years for GM stuff. So
that's why I think it seems like a lot of people think that once you start messing with something, you forget or you don't do the other thing. It's like you'll never leave, especially GM, just because we've been doing it for so long. You're never going to leave that. But it is nice to be able to have experience in other things as well because they can blend together.
Yeah, and sometimes you might learn something, say, on an R8 and apply it to the GM stuff. So same with the side-by-side components. I mean, it was just natural. Like, I'm not going to sleep on a good idea. If I come up with something cool, I'm just going to make it. So it really doesn't take away from any of the stuff we already do. It just adds to it.
Yeah, don't sleep on the bag.
No, you can't. Man, if they're good, I'll be riding around on the side of the mountain, come up with a good idea. I'll email myself. Like, don't forget about this.
Yeah,
Circle back to it.
that's awesome. What is the future for, or you got anything else?
I mean, I think that's pretty much where he's going to go.
Yeah, the future is
Do everything.
increase our product development. Like, it's not slowing down. It's definitely gaining traction even on an older platform. And I'll tell you what, the beginning of the story where I worked at ATS Racing for 6 years, I remember thinking, they stopped making these cars in 1995. How is this business going to be around? Well, guess what? They're my friends. I still go see them. These dudes have tons of MR2s and products, and it's just flourishing.
Wow.
If you put your time and dedication into something, and you really want to do it,
Yeah.
these platforms will go forever. I think the V2 will be around for a very long time. I do think the market's dropped from what it used to be, but it's never going to go away.
Yeah, I think
because it's such an iconic car.
It falls out of the hands of a certain demographic and into your next demographic, but then eventually some hardcore enthusiasts start picking it up, and that's what you want to be around.
Like, we'll never get rid of Wendy's car ever.
Right.
Like, it's not. I'll never sell it. It's just we love the car. We love the platform. And
Same
we still have another Turbo 400 one too.
Same with my Lexus. A lot of people ask me all the time, where is it? Do you still have it? Well, the answer is I do still have it.
Yeah.
It's in a storage container, and it's going to come out at the right time.
Right, but it's nothing you want to get rid of. It's something you want to keep.
No, you can't sell something like that. Everything I learned on that car is invaluable. I mean, it's what's carried me to here today, is building a car that they really didn't make parts for.
Yeah. Well, that's what you do now.
Yeah. So, yeah, building, manufacturing products and coming up with good ideas is definitely what I'm passionate about. And it takes a lot of energy and kind of thinking outside the box sometimes, but it's definitely what I'm here for.
Speaking of thinking outside the box, it's going to be some more controversial shit here. Electric cars, what's your thought? Where's it going, and are you interested?
I'm not interested in it.
Yet.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind driving one. They're like I said before, my Milwaukee chainsaw kills a gas-powered chainsaw all day long. So
I had that internal battle with a Ego lawnmower.
I don't know if
my
I want. I
God.
still like the gasoline lawnmower.
I thought so, but you buy the Ego brand, that like the gray one with the green. Man, it shits them a lot.
Kills
My
it.
lawnmower, it was so bad. My other one would bog down so bad, and this thing, 45 minutes, you charge the battery back up, and it'll cut down. Grass this tall, it
You
don't
need
care.
That's true.
tune-up.
It'll bush hog that shit.
Well, I haven't done it, so I just need to do it. But the chainsaw, I got experience with it. But I've driven electric cars too, and they're ridiculously fast and fun. I think there's a flaw in our roads and current safety standards of cars are not up to an 8,000-pound electric vehicle. Like, they weigh more than regular cars. And when they wreck and they mow through a guardrail and then catch on fire and you can't put them out, that's
Right.
something our infrastructure wasn't really ready for. So I think technology is kind of coming above our safety standards now. The cars themselves are pretty safe because they implement
Right.
stopping before you get into an accident, but apparently they still wreck them somehow.
Something I thought was kind of funny is just in Puerto Rico, the power grid's not the greatest, right? Like, they have random little blackouts, less than California, but they still have them. But if you buy an EV, because I just bought a Model 3, because you don't pay tax on it.
Oh, okay.
So they're increasing electric cars there with a grid that's already kind of crap.
Already in a bad spot. Yeah. Yeah.
So for that aspect, I think it's not going to be great. But I do think that there is going to be an enthusiast market for it.
So I follow all forms of automotive stuff, racing or whatever, and one of them is the Dakar Rally. And one of the vehicles that's won the Dakar Rally is a hybrid Audi. It has like a 2-liter, I think it's turbocharged engine that is basically just a generator for the electric motors. And
That's what I think the future
I think that's
should
the future,
be
yeah.
for the people that want to go green. But I think using the gasoline motors is where the issue's at.
There's a
If they
hybrid.
did diesel motors, it would be a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
I think just because of the torque.
Yeah, I think it's a hybrid that's the future. Purely electric doesn't give you much leg to stand on if you go on long trips and things like that. or
Right.
get
Yeah, I would
stranded.
never buy
Yeah.
one if I lived here.
Yeah.
So
I think
in
there's
Houston,
scenarios where
I could never do that because they say 260 miles of range, but the way we drive,
Yeah.
the way Wendy drives, probably 150, 180.
I think
but on
they
the
all have-
island, that's only 300 miles across. It's not a problem.
Yeah. I think they all have their place, but ultimately the where people should put their money is probably in hybrids.
But if it comes to motorsports, would you get on board?
I don't know.
The M3 Performance is pretty saucy, and if you can get into the calibration of it,
Yeah, I mean, you force me into it, I'll do it. But
it's just something I thought would be kind of cool. A lot of shops, they're either super against it or they're super for it.
I'm
And
definitely not against it. By
I
any
think
means.
buying one for the reason we bought it, which was just to travel around the island and no maintenance, it's worth it. It's $30,000 for a new car.
Yeah.
But in the performance world right now, the fact that you can't really tune them, yes, it's cool. Yes, it's fast, but it's this fast and that's what it does. But once they become tunable and we can do upgrades and things like that, I think they said AEM, I think it's AEM,
Yeah, I
makes a
think so.
controller now for it.
Yeah.
So once they get into that, is that something you would maybe get into?
I think that in the next 10 years is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely never one to say no. There's
Definitely
no
not
way.
for an efficient daily, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, look at RC car racing. What's the fastest ones? It's the electric cars.
With 7 stages of traction control and stuff.
Yeah. Nobody's out there playing with gas, RC cars. They're doing electric cars. So
Would you swap the Lexus?
Lexus, I think it's probably too early for that.
But would you do it?
We need to come back with a real turbo car first. Don't be getting me tripped up, dude.
I'm just saying, if you got a good controller, you can tell it how much power you want, and
That's true.
you want to be the innovator again. You be the one that does the Tesla swap in the IS300.
Black sheep.
Damn.
You do that, I'll buy an IS300.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
A few of my best friends have LS swapped IS300s. Like the roommate we lived together when I built the first one, worked at T1 with him for 6 or 7 years. I don't think he works there anymore, but he worked there for at least 10 years. He has a turbo IS300. One of my other roommates has one he's building right now, his first one. So there's a lot of people that I know have done that swap, and it's pretty cool to see.
I always thought that car was just like one of the coolest looking cars that they've ever come out with. I mean, the RCFs are kind of cool too, but
It was always funny to hear the rednecks be like, "Why you got them Euro taillights on there?"
Yeah.
You're like, this is an Altezza. That's
how
what
they
created
come.
these taillights.
yeah, that came from this.
Yeah. I've heard other people explaining it. I'm like, oh, I don't even have to say anything. But no.
I like rice. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see that car back out at some point, but we have some stuff to prove with the V10 platform, more stuff with, by the time this podcast comes out, we're going to have another shop car.
Yeah, it'll be 3 months from now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because it's actually probably today we're going to have that other car. So
Oh my god. That's good.
And the other car
Yeah,
should be pretty cool.
yeah. Well,
It'd be nice to see
we
you
could
back
talk
in
about
that
it since
platform.
we're going to already be posting about it by the time the podcast comes out. So
yeah.
Oh,
we're going to build a V2 wagon, so like a 2014 CTSV wagon. We'll go through some stages with it, with our products that we manufacture, do some install videos, because that's a big thing now. We make all these cool products, but how do you install them? So we need to spend more time with that. And might even do a 10-speed swap. Who knows?
Damn.
hit up Sean.
You had a wagon you posted. I don't think it was a V wagon.
Oh, the IS300 wagon.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. It
was
was
crazy.
I thought I saw that.
There
that was crazy.
He blended multiple of our products. We didn't even know about it. This guy was just buying stuff. And we actually, at the end of it, we went through and looked at his invoices and we're like, oh, cool. You bought the IS300 swap kit and headers. And I think like maybe clutch hydraulics too, because we make a bunch of stuff to complete the swap, right? And then later he bought some LSA stuff like idler brackets and idlers pulleys. He bought one of our ice tanks. That tank right there, actually, for the EMP is in the back of his trunk. And they call it a Sport Cross, which is the IS300 wagon. And he has an LSA supercharged engine in this IS300.
That's
and,
pretty sick.
And it's a good looking car and it's fast. And he does all kinds of silly stuff on the street with it.
That looks crazy.
You don't do the dragon drives, do you?
No, I've never done one.
Should do that with the wagon.
Yeah, We have
I want to get into them really bad. I think they're really cool.
We have a customer that does it with his father. I think he may have done it with his grandfather as well in a V wagon.
But you have a lot of experience track, street, you know, so I think that would be kind of another cool chapter for you.
Yeah, and I guess I started my days in this industry as a mechanic, then a fabricator, and then a tuner. So I kind of have
you can cover it all with you.
Yeah,
with the Lexus.
and we inadvertently covered that stuff. But yeah, the
Lexus
Lexus
would be a good
wild-
drag and drive, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Yeah,
That would be cool.
yeah, it would do it. I mean,
Next iteration drag and drive Lexus.
maybe not with the Power Glide, which is what it had last time.
Put a 10 speed
Oh
in
yeah,
it.
that's right.
Yeah, 10 speed in there would be cool.
There you go. See? And the 10 speed can be controlled by the Motec or a Holly.
True. Yeah, we had talks of putting an LT4 in the IS300 at one point.
Oh, yeah. That would be cool, too.
Yeah. Go back, reset that blower record in a IS300. That'd be funny.
Still
'Cause
low record.
The
That's
car
all that
weighs
matters.
like 2,400 pounds.
Jesus.
Yeah, just stick with LS.
I didn't know they were that low, that light.
Well, that one is. Yeah.
Damn.
It's the only hardtop IS300 I've ever seen. It had no sunroof, and I don't know why. But yeah, most of them have sunroofs.
Yeah. I was just sitting there thinking of how many I've seen, and they've all got sunroofs on
All of them, yeah. I got lucky. It was local, like in Garland.
Yeah. I hate sunroofs, and every vehicle I own has a sunroof.
Yeah, same.
I'm like,
Even
man,
my
I just
truck.
can't win everything. My
Even-
truck has one, too.
Yeah,
I'm like, dang it, sunroof.
yeah.
Ready to wrap it up?
Yeah. Anything else you can think of? I mean, try to cover everything. You got a
Yeah.
lot. You
Man,
got
we're
a
just,
lot of life experience here.
Yeah,
So.
well, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I'm sure we left plenty out, but ultimately, man, we're here to do a good job. You know, that's my goal every day is to make sure, you know, if it's me on the phone, one of my employees or one of my techs, like whatever we're talking about, it's factual. We're doing the right thing for the customer, and we're doing the best job possible in the shop.
And actually testing things so
Testing
you know.
things,
so when
you
you
know.
speak from a place of experience.
Yeah, it's very common that somebody's like, "Well, I want to buy this." I'm like, "Dude, don't even waste your money on that." I was like, "I'd love to sell it to you and make 20% or whatever, but I don't want you to have that part. You don't need it. It's not gonna
Yeah,
help
a lot
you,
of people
so-
don't do that,
So
unfortunately.
just keep doing honest work, and you know, I always say if you build it, they'll come. So I don't mind being out here in Weatherford, where you got to drive an hour to come see me. I'm out here to do a good job.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks
And,
for having me.
You know, thank you for watching Go Hard Podcast. Make sure you check out Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok for the shorts. And you're already watching YouTube. Thank you again, Matt. Thank you, Justin, for coming out. We have another podcast after this. But yeah, guys, stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.
Peace.